Good morning to all those who are here in person. I did want to take a special privilege and say hello to my wife who is here to supervise today. So thank you for coming, Kim. I also wanted to call this meeting to order. This is the morning session of the December 5th Johnston County Board of Commissioners meeting. And as is customary, we will open with a prayer led by Vice Chairman Harris. And then we have a pledge led by Marine Corps League Detachment 1236 of Johnston County. So if you would, please rise.
Let us pray together. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we pause this morning to come with thanksgiving in our hearts. Father, we're just thankful for so many blessings that you bring to each one of us. Father, thank you that we woke up this morning in this great place and that we're able to assemble here together to conduct the business of the people of this county. Father, we ask that you bless the decisions made here. Give us strength, wisdom, and courage and understanding. Father, we ask that you pray that you bless the people of this county as they work hard every day and that they go about the business of raising their families. Father, we ask that we be a service to them, Lord. Please bless this meeting, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
If I can take a point of privilege, one of our commander-in-chief said in the 80s, most people spend a lifetime wondering if they made a difference. Marines don't have that problem. Present on. Pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's go. Carry on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we request him every meeting? Let us know.
He's clearly a drill sergeant.
Hey, I'm glad I got somebody over there that outranks him there. Yeah.
All right. First up on the agenda is organization of the board.
Mr. Hester.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Congratulations to those that took your oath of office this morning.
Thank you.
This time, we'd like to open the floor for nominations for board chair.
Mr. County Manager, I'd like to nominate Butch Lauder.
Second. What do we do?
Mr. Moderator, in lieu of the fact that he has so ably served, I think I move that we close the nomination and elect by acclamation.
Very good. Congratulations, sir.
We need a
Thank
second
you.
to vote.
Second. Yeah, hey, I don't know how to, yeah. All right.
Where'd you lose control at?
All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye.
All right.
All right, Mr.
Congratulations.
Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the faith that you put in me for another year as chairman. So with that, we will move on to the election or nomination of the vice chair. And I will call for nominations now.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Patrick Harris to serve as vice chair.
A second.
All right. Any other nominations? If not, I'll entertain a motion for.
I move that the nomination be closed and we elect by acclamation.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the appointment of Mr. Harris to vice chairman, please say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, sir. You don't have to reprint any nameplates.
All right, good.
Save money.
We still have to stand by.
Save taxpayer money.
Yeah, there we go.
That wasn't a determining factor.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was.
That was for Ted, I'm sure.
It was.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Save those cards.
All right, the next up is approval of the agenda or discussion of any items on there that need discussion. Hearing any?
Chairman, I make a motion we approve the agenda as stated.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for approval of the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda's approved. Next up, we have consent agenda items, and we have 6 of those today. We have additions to the DOT system. We have appointments to the Livestock Arena Management Board and the Veteran Services Advisory Board. We also have some budget revisions for the Sheriff's Office, adoption of our regular board meeting schedule for 2023, and approval of the public officials' bonds for the county and the tax releases and refunds from October 15th through November the 15th of 2022. Any items that we need to pull to discuss further? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. All right, next item is public comments. If there is anyone here wishing to come forward to speak, you have 3 minutes. We ask that you keep your comments cordial and remind you that this is an opportunity for you to present your comments and your information. It's not an exchange of ideas or discussion with the commissioners, and I'll remind the commissioners of that same fact. It's not an opportunity for us to engage folks in conversation, but to listen. And if you would, please come forward, state your name and your town or township of residence. Anyone wishing to come forward, please come forward now. Don't be shy. All right, don't see anybody coming forward, so we'll look to the new Madam.
Wait,
Oh.
Mr. Chairman.
Come on. I know, I said don't be shy. I did not imagine that you were going to be shy. So, yeah.
Good morning. I am Ken Boham, the renter president at Johnston Community College for a few more days. I live at 256 Lucky Ribbon Lane in Holly Springs, North Carolina. It's in Wake County, and since I'm supposed to tell you what township it is, and I didn't remember, I just looked it up, and it's Holly Springs Township. So I think that takes care of everything. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you.
And good morning to you commissioners, but congratulations on being elected to your positions. And you can save money. You don't have to change the stationery. So I just wanted to come by and take the opportunity to say how much I appreciate your support and how much I also appreciate working with county manager. It's been a good run, and I am very, very appreciative of your support for Johnston Community College. Good news is we're up 93 students at this point in time over last year, and about 38 more FTE, and that equates to dollars. If somebody asks me what that intervening variable may be, I proudly say it is the JOCO Commissioner's promise that has moved the needle and given opportunities to people in Johnston County, and I hope you will continue with that so people can take advantage of that. I'm going to miss you, but I certainly enjoyed working with you. I do have one thing that the board asked me to bring to you, and so I shall do so at this time. There was a letter transmitted to your chair that basically states that it's regularly scheduled November 10, 2022 meeting of the Board of Trustees of Johnston Community College. The trustees voted to go on record as requesting the Johnston County Commissioners place on the ballot for the November 2024 referendum an amount of $75 million for Johnston Community College. The funds will be for the purposes of land acquisition, infrastructure requirements, facility construction, campus remodeling and renovations, instructional equipment upgrades, improvements and repairs for the enhancement of educational opportunities for Johnston County residents and for economic development in the form of workforce development. So if I may, Mr. Chair, I'll leave that with the clerk.
Please.
And look forward from afar to seeing, hopefully, that on the ballot. I can't vote for it, but I did vote for the one in Wake County.
All right. So before you step away, I did want to thank you for your, although be it a short time, but impactful time that you've been interim or renter president for Johnston Community College. You have made a big change in, I think, the morale, not just on the campus, but in the county and on this board. And you have moved the needle in a positive direction. So I wanted to personally thank you for that, but on behalf of this board, thank you for that as well.
My
Indeed.
pleasure.
Good job.
Dr. Boyd, thank you so much for your service. The only negative thing that I've heard about you is they wish you could stay longer. So we thank you for your work and your service.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, we affectionately, well, he does too, refer to his expiration date. And we joke that is the day he works one day longer than his wife told him he could work. It's his expiration date. So we will honor his date that he's going to leave us. But thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say he brought a fresh breath of air to the college, and also to being present at the commissioners meeting. I can't count how many times. Only one was for money, and well, counting today, it makes two. You know.
Who's counting?
But it's been a pleasure dealing with you, and sadly you're going, but you know, we'll respect your rental terms. You got to be returned to your wife. So thanks again for all you do.
Thank you. All right. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Merry
Thanks,
Christmas.
Ken.
Thank you so much.
All right. Anyone else change their mind and want to come forward? All right. And Madam Clerk, the first, Dana Cuddington's first official day my first meeting as our new clerk. So any emails? Okay. Thank you very much. And congratulations again. All right, next up, we have a public hearing for Economic Development Incentive Grant, Project Ready, and I'm going to call on our Economic Development Director, Chris Johnston, I said that intentionally, Johnston, to come forward, and I will open the public hearing at this time.
Good morning. He was just asking for money again for me, so as I've stated before, over the past 12 months, the County Economic Development Office has not been able to respond and to submit for over 60 now investment opportunities in job creations due to the lack of building inventory. And adding this up, it represents well over billions of dollars. And somebody's asked me, well, we have gotten every one of them. I'm like, well, I don't know if we'd have gotten all 60, but if we'd have just gotten 5% or 10%, you're talking about 3 or 4 potentially new jobs that could have relocated here in Johnston County. And so a lot of counties get into the spec building business. They own their own land, but here in Johnston County, we've taken a more prudent and conservative approach to where the government is not competing against the private sector, and we look for ways that we can partner with that. So during the past budget year, this board addressed this philosophy and approved the ability to support 4 opportunities to work with willing developers to meet the speed to market demands that are existing today. With the building lease program, there's been funded. The developers work in partnership with the county to construct Class A buildings to market to potential clients considering Johnston County. And this model has been extremely successful over in Lee County, and it's our hope that it can be duplicated here. As a reminder to our citizens, this 2-year month-to-month lease program does not begin until the building has received its certificate of occupancy, and then the $3 per foot up to 100,000 square feet rate is well below the average market rate for Class A space. Taxpayer safeguards are in place so that if the building is sold or leased prior to the completion of the building, the county is not required to make any lease payments for the building, and if at that time during the 2-year period, if the building is either leased or sold to a client, the county's commitment is immediately over. It is E.D. Parker Corporation's desire to partner with the county with this program and invest and build a state-of-the-art 270,000-plus square foot Class A facility that will be located on Chicopee Road in the town of Benson. The Parker Corporation is a leading commercial real estate development and design build firm in multiple markets throughout the Triangle region. They have a strong background that focuses on build-to-suit office, medical, and industrial projects. In addition to over $25 million industrial investment, the project has the ability to create at least 25 jobs or more in the foreseeable future with average salary of well over $50,000, and this exceeds the current average for the county and the town. And as with all incentive grants, it has been vetted by the County Economic Development Advisory Board, which is made up of 14 business and civic leaders across Johnston County and represents every municipality. And as customary, this project and all projects, the investment has also been vetted by Dr. Mike Walden, retired professor and economist with North Carolina State. And his report shows that the monetary investment, as well as the job and ancillary job growth, is projected to be thousands annually for the county. And as our County Attorney Jennifer Slusher will cover, the project checks the 4 legal statutes boxes with regards to economic development incentives. Does it meet the job requirement? And 25 jobs, yes. Does it meet the investment threshold? 25 million is far exceeds the current policy of 5 million. And does it meet the competition? Yes, the Parker Corporation has footprints across the Triangle region in North Carolina and can well invest in other areas. And does the project meet the job diversification requirement? And again, want to remind everybody that along the I-95 corridor, this is something that this body has given direction to my office to make sure that if we can direct any kind of job growth along the I-95 corridor due to the loss of textiles and the tobacco industry in the mid-'90s in the manufacturing section, then that does meet the job. So the answer to all those questions is undoubtedly or undeniably yes. And so the Johnston County Economic Development Advisory Board respectfully asks that the county vote favorably on the Economic Development Incentive Grant and the lease program presented before you. And at this time, I'd like to call on Ms. Jennifer Slusher to present you the legal language, and after which I'd then like to ask Mr. Dale Parker to step up with the E.D. Parker Corporation. He can invite his or introduce his son, Daniel, as well. So thank you very much.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I offer for your consideration a resolution attaching a proposed economic development incentive grant and single-tenant commercial lease for the project proposed by Parker Chicopee 1 and described by Mr. Johnston. As Mr. Johnston told you, the project does meet the 4 factors that are required under the economic development statutes, and the economic impact analysis by Dr. Michael Walden opines that the direct, indirect, and induced impacts from the development at full build-out of a 270,000 square foot building is estimated to be over $23 million. But for this grant and this opportunity, this project would not be moving forward with this scope or in this location. As to the incentive grant, the capital investment that has been committed is not less than $13 million to develop and construct not less than 144,000 square feet of Class A spec industrial facility in the Banner Township. You may ask why we're talking about 144 and 13 million. In talking with Mr. Parker, there has been conversation about phasing potentially this project. The more we talked about it, the more it seems like it may all happen at one time, but it will be not less than 144,000 square feet, and at full build-out, 270,000 square feet, with an initial investment of not less than $13 million, with an estimated total investment between 20 and 25 million. So that's what we're looking at with full build-out of the project. The capital investment is proposed to be completed by March the 31st, 2024, which is an aggressive schedule, and the job creation is expected to be completed by December 2025. The incentive proposal is a cash grant to be made in up to 5 annual payments beginning March the 15th, 2025, which are quantified and measured as 50% of the ad valorem taxes paid on eligible investments. In this case, the eligible investments are real estate improvements, not including the cost of land, just the improvements that are made during the investment period. If the incentives are granted, then Parker Chicopee 1 commits to making these eligible investments attaining the employment goal, and certifying all of these things to Johnston County prior to any grant payment ever being made. The grant payments are conditioned upon Parker Chicopee 1 paying all of the taxes situated in the county that is subject to ad valorem taxes. They must be current on all payments owed to the county, current on all filings of annual property tax listings, and have no current appeal pending with the Property Tax Commission. They also may not be in violation of any other obligation to the county, including they must be in compliance with all county ordinances and regulations. There are recapture provisions in the agreement if Parker does not carry out and maintain the terms of the agreement, and the grant also contains provisions for that single-tenant commercial lease not to exceed 2 years at $25,000 a month. And again, as Mr. Johnston said, the recapture provisions apply if the building is sold during the lease period. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have about the proposed grant.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
There is no equipment or personal property involved in this, is there?
Correct. This is a real estate grant only.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right.
At this time, I'd like to call on Mr. Dale Parker. Before I do that, I also want to make sure that I recognize two advocates for the Economic Development Office in the southern end of the county, Ms. Kimberly Pickett, new town manager that was appointed, and I think there was a reception sometime in the past couple of weeks, but also our tallest mayor in all of probably Johnston County, if not eastern North Carolina, Jerry Medlin. So I'd be remiss if I didn't point out them too. But at this time, I'd like to call on Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, it's a pleasure to be in front of you today and talk about this project. We are from Benson. The project is in Benson, the southern end of the county. Just off of 95, it's serviced by actually 2 interchanges will actually serve the project. And it is a Class A, we say a Class A plus building. We're trying to really get the aesthetics. We realize we're not Research Triangle, which is where some of the companies wants to be. So we've got to provide a little bit better product, we feel, and we think this really fits it. It's a big step for our family, but it's one we believe in. I was raised on a tobacco farm outside of Blackman's Crossroads, so I'm very familiar with Johnston County, and I'm very tickled to see the direction that the commissioners and county government is carrying things to. And like I said, we really feel the southern end of the county will feel some of the economic expansion with all the roads that's coming in place and the things happening. But that is mainly what we're trying to do. And we do, like Chris mentioned, some of our construction companies work all over the southeast. We're very familiar with what's happening in areas in Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, and other areas. And we really feel this is one of the strongest areas of the state and of the entire southeast. And so that's why we're really hoping with your help to make this happen in Benson. And we really appreciate all the county has done. We appreciate what the mayor and town government has done. They have been very supportive of all this and what we have tried to do. At this time, I'd like to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Parker? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Listen, I'd just like to say it is much more fun being on this side of this wall than it is on that side. But I appreciate what y'all do.
Sometimes we
Thanks,
wonder
Dave.
about that, yeah. All right. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to come forward to speak to this matter? All right. Any final comments by commissioners, questions?
You know, I might comment, Mr. Chairman. We get involved in these from time to time, and hopefully get involved in more of these. but very often it's from people outside of our area. And it is, it's heartwarming to see somebody. I've known Dale for probably 25 years, and he's a good, hardworking local guy, and I'm pleased that we're able to enter into this agreement with his company.
Good point.
I would just say, same thing as Commissioner Gott, I'm really excited to see this come to Benson, and, you know, Chris talks all the time about creating more jobs, that we're keeping people in the county, and so I'm just excited to bring more opportunity for his vision to keep everybody here, or at least 30 by 30, I think is what he said.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm excited. Anytime people are not heading in the same direction I am going to Wake County, keeping them here is a good thing. So if no other comments, I will close the public hearing and turn it over to the board for a motion.
I make a motion to adopt a resolution approving the project summary for is that right? Yeah. An economic development incentive grant and authorizing the county manager and county attorney to finalize the corresponding agreement.
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is a public hearing for a petition for road abandonment, State Route 1347, better known as Old Olive Road. So I will now open the public hearing and call on our attorney, Jennifer Slusser, to come forward and present the purpose of this hearing.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I have some materials that I want to make sure that, I've emailed this to you, but I want to make sure that you have it at your seats if I may approach.
Is this that one?
It is.
No, this is
Okay.
actually what I emailed out to you last week from Mr. Hunter Olive.
Got it.
I think I emailed it out to you Friday.
Thank you.
And you should have some comments that you received from
Thank you.
Tammy Thompson, and you should have those at your desk, and then I have emailed additional comments to you previously. So what you have before you is a petition to abandon a portion of Old Olive Road from the state maintenance system. And you've got in your packet the information that we received from the Department of Transportation. You've also got a copy of the petition. You have a map that shows you the portion that is proposed to be abandoned. There are 4 homes that are affected by, or at least adjacent to, the abandonment. All of the owners of those properties are petitioners on this particular petition. You also have in your packet a resolution of consent to close from the town of 4 Oaks. My understanding in talking with Sam Lawhorn at the Department of Transportation is that the Department of Transportation supports the petition, or at least staff supports a recommendation for closure of the petition or abandonment from the state system. It is my understanding that there is a question about the Department of Transportation's right-of-way in that area. They can't find the right-of-way encroachment agreement, and it is extraordinarily narrow through that portion of Old Olive Road, and it is my understanding that it would be difficult to get paving in that area in the future without additional right-of-way, and because of the location of some structures and that sort of thing, that would be very difficult. The way that this process works, it's under North Carolina General Statute 136-63, and this is, what this statute says is that a county may, on its own motion or a petition of a group of citizens, and here you have a petition of a group of citizens, request that the Board of Transportation change or abandon any road on the secondary system when it's in the best interest of the people of the county that will be served thereby. And so the standard that you utilize in reviewing this request is public interest. And as you know from your zoning cases, public interest is wide and broad, and you have legislative authority as to what you determine that public interest should be. The particular, you have before you some information from Mr. Olive, who supports the request for petition, and you also have information before you from Ms. Thompson, who is in opposition to the abandonment from the DOT system. I will say that the Board of County Commissioners does not make the determination as to whether or not the road is ultimately abandoned from the system. It's the Department of Transportation that makes that determination, but the Board of Transportation will only consider it once a recommendation has been made by this board. The reason that the town of 4 Oaks was requested to weigh in on this particular issue is because this property is in the town of 4 Oaks ETJ, so we wanted the town's position before we brought it to you, which is one of the reasons, as you can see from the date this was originally brought to you, or the petition was submitted back in April, and it has taken some time and some research to get all of the information that we needed to be able to provide that to you so that you could make a recommendation as to what you think should happen with regards to this petition for the abandonment of the road. This does not, this takes it off the maintenance system. The county is not closing a road under the road closure statutes for counties. That's not what we're doing today. But this is a petition to remove it from the state system. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the process.
Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Slessor. If there's anyone else in the audience that wishes to come forward to speak, please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please. And I will say we do have the information that Ms. Slessor mentioned at our desk. So.
Okay. My name's Tammy Thompson. Good morning.
Good morning.
I live at 3583 Packing Plant Road, Smithfield. I do own property on Old Olive Road as well. This is in kind of opposition to the abandonment process for Old Olive Road, and it's my fourth effort to reach out to you on this matter. While I do not support the closure, I do recognize the concerns of the petitioners. However, the solution to benefit one should not come at the expense of others. I do ask you to keep that in mind because those others are your public, the people of this county, that you are charged with making sure that the best interest of those folks are served. My concerns are of the adverse effects to my individual property. I'll discuss those and also the ones, the other residents and landowners of that road. It's not about winning or losing. It's about real people that are being affected by the desire of another group and how we might be able to come to a reasonable solution to that situation. The general statute that Ms. Slusher just spoke of does tell you to keep the best interest of the people of the county. It's not just the petitioners, it's everybody else, all the rest of us that live on that road, and we will be affected by that. I appeal to you to consider the alternative solutions that I will present to you as options to think about that might help with everybody, including the petitioners. A little bit of history on the road. I have provided you with lots of documents and links that you can pull up. The path that is to become Old Olive is visible in 1937 and in 1949 historical maps that are on file at the Heritage Center. I encourage you to look at those maps. This road's been around for a long, long time. It has been in place since 1953, possibly before, and maintained by DOT. I found it on a map in 1953, did not find it in a previous map of 1949. So that's why I say somewhere prior to 1953, the road did come into being. I've provided documents for you to see that a section of the road, because right-of-way could not be obtained, was abandoned. At the same time, in the same paperwork from 1955, another section had already been built and was in place and under the maintenance of, at that time, the State Highway and Public Works Commission, which is now DOT. So I just can't understand how one section can be abandoned because they couldn't get right-of-way, yet another section is built and being maintained and has been for 70 years at taxpayers' expense, and they didn't get right-of-way. Back in the 50s, I'm not sure everything was documented and in print. It was verbal. It was handshake. It was write it on a scrappy sheet of notebook paper, put it in your pocket, and maybe it never made it to the recording office. I don't know. I just know that those folks were extremely happy that that road was coming in. Old Olive Road is documented and maintained as being owned and maintained by DOT on their street information database map. I've provided that map for you as well. It is listed as a secondary route. I have provided for you the State Highway and Public Works Commission paperwork from 1955. It looks like this, the first page of it. That shows where those roads, where that road was approved for abandonment and for addition. Part of that document that I gave you has little blue arrows on it as this. Those are the areas that indicate information pertaining to this road. It shows in the same paperwork as I stated before, where one section is to be added, one section is to be abandoned. Again, how did they do that when they didn't have right-of-way in place? That right-of-way's got to be somewhere. I have also provided you with a map that shows you the section of the road that is not included in the abandonment. The map that you have in your petition looks like this. That documents where the abandonment starts at the beginning off of Black Creek Road and how far it goes. What this map in the petition does not show you is what is on the remainder of the road that this petition to close or abandon will affect. This map shows you what is on the road that will be affected. It will affect 23 parcels, roughly 450 acres that are only accessible by Old Olive Road. There are 2 additional parcels that contain about 76 acres that do have access from Packing Plant Road, but they also have access on Old Olive. There are 19 landowners. There are 9 homes, a business, the airport tower, and the county's, the Johnston County Law Enforcement pistol range is there. The abandonment will create a 1 3/10 mile long, 1.5 lane dead-end dirt road with no county water. No water back there. Now, DOT's investigative report that was in the previous, the petition, does state that the average daily traffic count is 100. Why would you close a road that serves 100 vehicles every day? I don't know. But take a look at this map, because there's a lot of people that are affected by that closure. That abandonment and closure will create emergency response and safety issues. I have provided you with a sheet that looks like this that describes the increased travel time and distance that emergency response teams will have to have will experience in trying to getting to us. Google says that it increases the time by 2 minutes. Google, however, does not take into factor the steep hills, the blind curves, darkness, rain, snow, the fact that emergency vehicles are large vehicles. And they're going to have to stop to let oncoming traffic pass because it's only about a lane and a half in a lot of places. And DOT's investigative report that's attached to the petition clearly states it's 18 feet wide in lots of places. That's the width that they have listed on their report. 2 minutes may not seem like a lot of time to you, but 2 minutes is a long time if you're pinned under a tractor or a tree or if you're watching your house burn down. The people of this county that live and work on that road, it affects them. They are the public that you need to be concerned about. The closure will force all traffic at this point to enter and exit Packing Plant Road. Is it fair that the other property owners experience that increased traffic by their homes? That increases their safety risk as well as the vehicle occupants that are on that road, passing each other on a 1.5 lane road. It will be an adverse effect to the public interest to increase the risk of so many. The map that I have provided for you that looks like this, I call it an incident map. It's got all kinds of little things on there. It does show you where the proposed closure is. The X's on there indicate where we had a major washout in that road with that last flood that we had, when was it, 2020, where the car was washed away with the 2 children and every road around here was destroyed. You count those X's. There's 6 of them. DOT had a time fixing that road. All those yellow spots are homes. That's people that were closed in that couldn't get in and out. If that road closure at the end of Black Creek Road happens, there's only one way for folks to get in and out, unless you take the tractor path that goes through the field. That tractor path has dikes and waterways in it. It'll take the front bumper off your little low-lying car. These people and their livestock would be trapped. Now, let's think about that little word, if. If. It is a tiny little word, but man, it's got so much meaning. It relates to the seriousness of a subject. If Black Creek Road is closed and a tree falls across the road, if we have another flood and the road is washed out, then we've got people and livestock trapped. No way in and out. Emergency vehicles must travel further to get to us, and they've got to stop and cut out trees, and then they probably still can't get to us because of gully washes. We all know dirt roads are not high on the fix-it list. We had a tree fall across the packing plant end back in June. A resident cut that tree out of the road. It's still laying in the ditch. We've had to do that thing numerous times. The petitioner has had to do that as well. Again, if that road is closed, it'll be detrimental to the public interest and all of us landowners that are left on the remaining section if we have issues like we have had in the past, and we've had numerous ones. That's another reason DOT would like to get this road paved. To cut down on the expense to the county for keeping this dirt road up. Who's going to be responsible for removing the road from GIS and GPS services? If emergency vehicles turn around at the Black Creek entrance just to find it closed, there's not enough room there to turn a fire truck around. It would have to back out into Black Creek Road on a blind hill, putting responders at risk, putting whoever's coming across that hill at risk, and you've got an emergency vehicle that could easily be involved in an accident. How expensive are they to replace? Another tax dollar to replace it. Then that's added another 2 or 3 minutes to the response time just to get that vehicle back out so that it can come around another 1.7 miles to get to us. just some things to think about the public that will be left on the remaining part of that road. That brings us to county water accessibility. If the road's closed, county water may never be available. The distance to our end is too far to run a water line that dead ends. It won't have enough water pressure for the folks that are at the end to have proper water pressure. A continuous loop is required to go back around to either Packing Plant Road or to Black Creek Road so that that water can have that continuous flow and it can have that pressure that it is needed. There's nowhere to run a utility easement through there because somebody else owns land. Why should another property owner have to give up land for something that is completely unrelated to him and his property? Seems to me that the perfect opportunity to lay a water line would be through that existing road before it is closed. Run that water line, that utility easement, get water back there to those people that need it, and there are folks back there that need it. Their wells are not sufficient so that they can wash clothes, flush the toilet, take a bath, wash dishes all in one day. And some of the wells are heavily laden with iron. We have a $5,000 water filtration system on our well so that we can operate, not have to have toilets that look the color of this every day. Water is needed back there. Closing that road and not providing an option for county water to the citizens of this county is not in their best interest. Then we come to school bus access.
Excuse me, Ms. Thomas, can I interrupt you?
Yes.
Can I ask the
Sure.
attorney? Ms. Slusser, the question at hand here is not closing the road, is it? It's the DOT abandoning maintenance,
It's abandoning maintenance from the system.
not closing the road.
It will be closed afterwards.
Okay.
DOT has confirmed that with me. They abandon it, and it will be closed. School bus access. It will be closed because a dead end will be created. Is that not closing a road? Ms. Slusser? A dead end will be created. That has been confirmed by DOT. If you close a section, how are you going to keep people from driving on it? A gate will be put up. The petitioner has already marked where the gate goes at both ends. But let's get back to the public interest here. School bus access. Johnston County citizens pay taxes for school buses. Am I correct? Am I correct in that matter? Mm-hmm. All right. If a road is closed, you've just slammed the door on ever getting a school bus back down that dead-end portion. I have attached a letter from Johnston County Public Schools Transportation Supervisor Joshua Louder, and it clearly states that if at any point Old Olive were to be closed at either Packing Plant Road or Black Creek Road, the public school system school bus would not be able to travel the roadway. There is no adjoining roadway to provide a safe turnaround or location. That's what that letter looks like, and it's in your packet. That is not in the best interest of your public. School buses won't be allowed to travel. If families with children want or need school transportation, they will not choose to come down our road and live. This will reduce the number of potential buyers for all property owners should they decide to sell their property. It could also be a determining factor for my very own children and grandchildren as to whether they choose to live on our family farm if they can't get access to a school bus. Now, granted, my family's got abilities to drive our children back and forth to school, but not all families will have. It is not in the best interest of us landowners, as well as our children and grandchildren, the people of this county, to let this road be shut down. My issue, we are the land that is at the very end of this road. It's 1.5 miles on a 1.5 lane dirt road to get to the last driveway on my property. It concerns me more than it does the other residents because they do have the advantage of living closer to the other end. However, it is going to affect them with water and with school bus accessibility. Property values will disintegrate. I sat down with 6 developers and asked them, look at my map. Tell me what you'd give me for my land. Oh, $20,000, bam, 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 in a heartbeat. So then I told them the issue with the land and the road and the water and the school bus. And they said, 4 of them dropped like dead flies. We would not even pick up the phone to call you and ask if you were interested in selling. It will cost them too much money to run wells and septic tanks for anybody down there. 2 of them said, well, we might consider $5,000 an acre, but we just have to kind of see. Not sure. Doesn't give me a whole lot of hope there. $5,000 an acre is below tax value. That land is worth way more than tax value in this market, and every one of you sitting on this board know that. This road closure will be detrimental to our land value and our marketability. This land's part of my 401k. It's detrimental to my individual land rights. Please don't let this happen, because who's to say they might decide they want to close another section of that road at some point and move it right on down the line. I understand that the issue is that there's right-of-way problems, and they say they own to the center line of the road. They also own to the center line of Black Creek Road. How many other landowners are in this county that own to the center line that doesn't have documented right-of-way? That if you open the door to this road being abandoned and closed, how many more are going to come knocking on your door to do the same thing? Think about that. In closing, there are a lot of issues to consider. The 4 that mean the most to me are safety, water and school bus access, and property values. If right-of-way is given to pave the road and create a suitable turnaround and county water before the closure, then that might be a solution that will appease everybody. There are residents that don't want that road paved. I'm kind of one of them. It's been a dirt road my entire life. Our family's been on that road since 1850. We don't like change. But I do realize that there are other issues, that there are more people than just me that this affects. I hope that the petitioner thinks the same way. A paved road will reduce safety risk and help maintain property values. County water will offer an option for residents in need and help maintain property values. Running that water line along the existing road that taxpayers have already paid out for 70 years to keep it maintained, why not use that road to take care of that utility easement? Sure makes sense to me financially to do that and to do it while the road is being paved, which is what DOT wants to do. The paved road and a turnaround will prevent problems with school bus accessibility, make our land more attractive to young families and potential buyers. So, with all of this in mind, I offer this as a solution for the board to consider. The petitioner wants the road closed, then request him to provide land for the required turnaround and a utility easement along the existing road for water and right-of-way on other properties that he owns and has influence over that are on the existing, the remaining part of Old Olive Road. And then we can get the improvements made and the paving done. In return, he gets his road closed after the work is done. I say after the work is done so that the other residents of this road can get in and out of their properties while the work is being done. The rest of us give up road access from one end. We grant right-of-way for road improvements and water, and then we get a safer road, we get improved emergency access, we get access to water, we have school transportation that is still available and can run down that road, and hopefully we've managed to salvage our property values and maintain its marketability. I ask you to think about the other people that are affected by this abandonment and subsequent closure, because that is what will happen. If you can figure out how a road is abandoned and it's not closed, then you tell me right now, am I mistaken? Did I completely miss something in that area? If you close a section of road, does that not mean you have, I mean, if you abandon it and DOT's not going to take care of it, public's not able to walk down it any longer, correct?
That's my understanding. We can refer to council for that, but I'm not sure exactly.
I mean, I'm asking a question. If you abandon a section of road, will that not subsequently cause it to be a dead end from the other end?
If the right-of-way is still in place, that would not be, I mean, they're talking about abandoning maintenance. They're not talking about abandoning the right-of-way or doing away with it.
There is no right-of-way according to the petitioner.
Yeah. It's to the
Okay.
center line, so it
It's to
would
the
be
center
private
line.
property.
If
so-
there's no right-of-way, then it seems to be a moot point.
Yeah.
So why was the right-of-way not obtained back in 1955?
That is
I
a
think
question that this board cannot answer. We're not
I think
responsible
it
for
was.
right-of-way
I think
acquisition.
it was obtained, and it has been lost. How could DOT have built a road and continue to maintain it for 70 years without some form of right-of-way in there? How could that have happened?
I would say that this is probably not the only case where, as you said, the road's been there for a while,
Yeah.
so things happen, and so
Yeah.
it's just not, there's just not documented, but things happen, so. Are you about to wrap up?
I am.
Thank you.
So I just ask you to think about the other people that this road abandonment/closure will affect. These are the people of the county that you are charged with their best interest. The solution that I've just offered will benefit everybody in some form or fashion. The solution to benefit one should not come at the expense of others. And if we all give up just a little, we all gain a little. So thank you for your time and consideration. I will address any questions you may have for me.
Any questions for Ms. Thompson?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else wishing to speak to this matter?
Are there any other property owners on that road here?
We found out about this hitting your board on Wednesday night. The folks that live on that road work, and they were not able to get off work.
Do you mind, if you're going, could you mind coming to the microphone to say that?
I can say that. We were notified of this hitting your board Wednesday night when I got home. I signed up for your little, what is it called, the agenda?
Sunshine alert.
The sunshine thing. And when I sat down to read it, and I've been reading them because I was expecting it to come up, but I thought I'd get a little more notice than this. But when I found it out Wednesday night, I turned around Thursday and Friday and started notifying the other residents and landowners. Plain and simple, they didn't have time to ask off work to get here.
All right, any other questions? And anyone else wishing to speak to the matter? All right, and we have referenced the emails that we've received on the matter, so if not, I will close the public hearing and turn it over to the board for their deliberation. It looks like we have three options. One is to concur with the recommendation and petition and request the DOT to grant the petition request to abandon a .32 mile portion of Route 1347 Old Olive Road from the state maintained system. The second option is to deny the recommendation and petition. And the third option is to take the matter under advisement. So I'll leave it to the pleasure of the board.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'd like to address a few things. My history with this road goes back a few years when there was a request to pave the road, and some 8-9 years ago. But again, there was no right-of-way. They couldn't get the road paved. Also, my history of this road is working with NCDOT to see if we could come up with a win-win in this particular case. And I think you, the chairman, you met with us and the attorney and county manager with DOT to see, and that time we were presented with that way. Now, Ms. Thompson speaks of safety. I think we need to talk about the safety of the petitioner also. And we speak of right-of-way. I believe a barn probably sits on the right-of-way over there, and it's a road. But the increase in traffic, in my opinion, is based on a business that is now down at the other end of that road that is creating traffic in and out, literally in the front row of the front porch of this petitioner. That road is not built for business to travel in and out except the other way in. It's not designed, in my opinion. In regard to the property values, we haven't had any testimony here to the fact from any party that would say the values would particularly be would go down if this happened. The town of Four Oaks weighed in on the issue, and as this board knows, they gave their resolution. I think that, and from the documents that were given to us from the petitioner, in which I hope will be read into, made part of the record, primarily the traffic is created by the business on the other end that are exiting off that Olive Road, and it would make more sense to me for a road of that nature to be exit from the other end of the road. So again, we're not. What's before us today is DOT's request for maintenance. Now, we don't make that decision. DOT is going to make that decision in the long run. Again, I think what we met with Sam Lawhorn, and the reason this has been going on since April is I think I look, and everybody here look for a reasonable win-win situation in this road. But I think also that if we talk about safety right now, the one at most risk is the petitioner, because some documented more than 100 vehicles have come down that road on the exit. So therefore, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that adopt the resolution approving the project summary, a recommendation and petition request to the North Carolina Department of Transportation, grant the petition request abandoning .032 miles portion of State Road 1347 Olive Road from the state maintained system. I didn't say anything about closure.
Do I have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Can I ask a question? Just so I can clarify, and I know we've kind of asked this a few different ways, but just so I'm understanding, I do have concerns with thoroughfare issues that were discussed and future potential that I could see this road being needed. But as I understand it, if we don't approve this, we're essentially telling somebody what they can and can't do with their own property, because we don't have anything in writing that there's a right of way. I just want to clarify that.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with that, and that's where my struggle is that in theory, it's not a road because there is no right-of-way. I mean, it's there, but there's no legal right-of-way for this road to exist, so it's almost a null point, so.
Okay. Yeah, and I did have a couple of comments. I know Ms. Thompson had mentioned school bus travel, and if I read the letter you referred to, currently, school buses aren't allowed on that road anyway. No, you're good. But I'm just saying that's what it says in that first sentence. It clearly says they are not currently allowed on there. So the safety issue for buses, if things were to change and the roads improve. So that was the other thing. And you had mentioned the residences on the road, and just doing the quick measuring on here, 7 of the 9 houses that you indicate are on that road are within the first half mile, a little bit less than a half mile off the packing plant side of that road. So again, the traffic is coming through a part of the road that we don't have right of way for anyway. So it's an old, basically it's an old path that's been converted into and used as a road, obviously without right of way being dedicated on it. So those couple of things to me, I appreciate all the research and the work you did putting into it and coming today to talk to us. But I tend to agree that there's safety issues on both ends. We have an unsafe issue now, and the question is, do we shift it around, or why would we shift it around? So any other discussion before I call for the vote? All right, well, so we have a motion and second to concur with the recommendation. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Duly noted that Commissioner Stevens voted against the motion. Motion passes 6-1. All right. Next up, we have a resolution certifying and declaring results of the 2022 referendum. And I think Martha Lassiter is going to come forward and present that to us.
The resolution before you, as the chairman said, asks you to certify and declare the results of the $177 million general obligation school bonds that were approved by the voters on November 8th. The Board of Election has already canvassed and certified the results formally, and once you do this, it also gives us staff the authority to publish the results. So this will be your last action to take regarding the referendum until we're ready to issue some of the bonds.
All right, any questions? I hear a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the resolution certifying and declaring the results of the 2022 bond referendum.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Just for the sake of my memory, what was the final percentage approval? Do you remember? It was around
I want to say it was 60,
68?
in the mid-60s. Okay. I don't recall the exact number.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next up, Chad Lamb, our finance director, is going to come and talk to us about town infrastructure projects and staff's recommendations.
Good morning.
Morning.
A few months ago, the board requested town submit for some municipal funding requests based on ARPA funding, that we were going to treat the projects like ARPA funding, but we were going to do it through the general fund. We've had towns submit their requests for projects. Our committee has met a few times on the projects, reviewed the projects, and are prepared to make a recommendation for the 8 towns that submitted for projects or for other things that they need to do based on the requests and based on the guidelines, up to $500,000 per town for each project for the one project they presented for each town. So that's our request today, and it's up to $500,000 per town, per project. We'll be happy to take any questions on any of these projects or any of the funding requests. But that is our recommendation, and we'll be happy to do whatever the board wants to do on that.
I'm going to just ask that the board consider taking this under advisement now so we can evaluate it further. I know some of the initial recommendations our considerations were for its impact on our system and the benefits to the county.
That's right.
So I wanted to make sure that we did that. And then also, I know we used the $500,000 as a guideline.
Yes.
And it seems that we've limited everything to $500,000, which is, I don't think, what we asked for.
Right.
So I will say that or suggest to the rest of the board that we take these under, and I know there's some time-sensitive ones in here, but I think that we want to make sure, one, if we're participating in the projects, that has some, I'll say, significant benefit for the county.
Yeah.
So, and to make sure that all the towns are aware who requested more, that that amount will still create a project. I'm just picking one right here. Town of Benson, $2.5 million request up to $500,000. I don't know if that carries today for them, if that makes it a non-project. Clayton's the same way with a $1 million request, and if a $500,000 will make that project a no-go. So I just want to make sure we confirm.
Yeah, I've spoken to the towns. I've spoken to the towns about the request that may be made, and the town of Benson informed me that project would still happen.
Okay. I've made a call to the other one, and I don't know that that's the case.
Yeah.
So
We're happy to, if you want to table it, we're happy to do that and work with you.
yeah, that's my recommendation.
Well, let me ask you a question, Mr. Chairman. If there's one or maybe even two that's not quite there, could we not deal with those on an individual basis?
I would be happy. I mean, there's some in there that are, I'm looking the town of Selma, 330, and I don't know that we don't award it. And I know historically if the project comes in, we'll consider it at that time, but I don't know that we'll award $500,000 on there. So if there's some on here that we can move forward, I'm happy to do those and reconsider the ones that requested more and we're given less. So,
Mr. McLam,
Yes, sir.
you may have said, but what was the total amount of dollars that we set aside?
We set aside $5.5 million.
$5.5 million, I thought that was the number. And so how much do we have actually requested in this?
Well, the requests, based on the projects that were submitted, is about 3.7. So we set up to 500,000. So, like, if, for instance, the $330,000 project, if that's where we move forward, we would do the 330,000.
Do you know where any thought has been given to the remaining funds that we can put back out there, or?
It's the pleasure of the board. You can add to these projects. We can do a round two if you want to do a round two for additional projects that may be out there. We work at the pleasure of the board, but we've set aside $5.5 million.
Well, I think the chairman has some valid concerns on part of it. Personally, I'd like to see maybe a round two if there is additional funds out there. I think we allocated based on supposedly all participated, and that has not been the case.
That's right.
But if this money can be used to further advance other projects within those that need it, I'm personally speaking, I would be in favor of that.
Yes, sir.
Because it meets what the process in which the intent was done for this $5.5 million.
Yes, sir. And me and our committee would happy to discuss further with the towns based on the board's requests. If there's some projects that you'd like to allocate additional funds to, we're happy to do it. If there's a round two, that's okay. We have until, we're treating it like ARPA funds, so they have until December of 2026 to spend these funds. So whatever's allocated, they have time. You have some time. I know some of them are eager to get started.
I would agree with the chairman's motion if we make it in the next 2 weeks. We decide, since this board is the governing factor of what happens, and address those issues. But I would like to see it moving forward no longer than 2 weeks from now.
We won't meet
We'll have a meeting
again.
in December. So,
I'm January, I'm sorry, yeah.
okay. Well, I would just say to Mr. Godwin's point, if I'm looking at the list, the ones that are below the $500,000 right now, first one is Princeton with the Beaver Dam storm drainage project. Again, for my mind, that's one we need to make sure that's a benefit, some benefit to the county. Kinley, $426,000 asbestos cement water line replacement. I think that probably benefits both of us, but that's something I'd like to get clear. So that's one I don't have that much of a problem approving. Pine Level has basically made a request for the $500,000 for a water meter replacement project that I know they're willing to go forward on at that $500,000. And again, just make sure that's has a positive impact on our system.
In some of these, we've met with our engineers,
Yeah.
we've looked to discuss these projects and how they would impact the county. And that, in some of them, that's the reason why we chose certain projects. Some maybe did not, and some did, especially if they submitted multiple projects.
So I'm gonna get through these other two, then I was gonna ask Ms. Farmer if she wants to come up and comment on
Sure.
at least those four. But Selma also requested for $330,000 for a water line upgrade, and then Four Oaks for the wastewater capacity purchase of $500,000. So those were, again, Princeton is one. Benson evidently is okay with only the $500,000 on their project. And then Clayton, I think we need some further discussion on that. But
Sure.
I would ask Ms. Farmer if you would if you can come up and say something about the benefits.
I'm going to defer to Caroline Ear. She served on the.
Oh, I did. Oh, sorry. I look over this way.
She's the pro on this one.
Okay. But so the ones initially, Kinley, Pine Level, Selma, and Four Oaks. And then we can talk about Princeton and Benson as part two, and maybe ask the mayor about his, so we can move some down the road.
You're not concerned about whether the Pine Level meets the benefit or not, are you?
I don't think so, but I just want to have
Yeah,
for the
because
record.
we got to remember that Pine Level's water is metered going in, and so, that would be a benefit to the town citizens, that make sure that their meters are operating correctly, because they're paying their bill by what's metered going in to Pine Level from the county.
Right. Hey, I'm not saying, I just would like that to be part of the record, because it's not in our little spreadsheet. So.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask a question. When we made this $5.5 million, up to $5.5 million available to the 11 municipalities, I don't remember there being a stipulation that had to be good for the county. I mean, it was for their benefit as it pertains to infrastructure and that type of thing.
I thought it had to have some benefit for the county. So maybe I remember that wrong.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to chime in on this too. I think in my vision, when we set aside the $5.5 million, is that this was going to be more like a grant process. It was, and the projects that were submitted would be based on their merit, and certainly would be scored higher if there's mutual benefit, but it wasn't a deal breaker if there wasn't. But to just do a blanket $500,000 for everybody, I mean, I just don't think that was at least not my intent. I would like to see us table this, take this under advisement, go back and revamp this and look at each individual project and look at the merits of the project, and then customize that. If they ask for $330,000 and we want to grant that, then grant them the $330,000, not the $500,000. I mean, because that remainder could go to another project that may or may not, as the chairman said, could be a deal breaker. It could be that they don't have the money to proceed with it. So I just think we could do a little bit cleaner job with it and bring it back in January, but that's just my humble opinion.
Maybe Ms. Renier can touch on the recommendation aspect of it.
Yeah.
Well, we did meet as a committee, and some of these applicants submitted numerous applications, and
You might want to get closer to the microphone.
Yeah, if you would. Sorry.
Sorry, it's tall. But
Don't take the batteries out.
Yeah.
no, we did meet as a committee, and we did put a lot of thought into, is this a good use of the money for the intended purpose, and would it be ARPA eligible if it did come from ARPA and all that. So in particular with the town of Kinley, that is actually a joint project.
Okay.
It goes along with our asbestos cement water line replacement project. through the truck stop there. We're interconnected in a lot of places, and it's a touchy area to go through. And the town asked, hey, while you're doing this, could we add this one line that's asbestos cement? We don't want to be connecting to their asbestos cement line, our brand-new line either, because the water flows back and forth. And so we saw an opportunity for synergy there, and we actually encouraged them to apply for this grant because we thought it was a win-win situation. So that one I highly recommend. Water meter replacement is always a good idea. One of the things I brought up to the committee is where we can most impact the ratepayers in these towns is to help fund non-revenue projects. So water lines and extensions to new properties, and you're going to be able to collect fees and all that. That's not going to impact the existing customers as much. But when you have to replace all your water meters, that's a cost that you can't recoup by getting new customers in. It's going to raise the bills. So as far as benefit to the customers of the county, I brought up that point right there because that keeps everybody's rates down when you can support a project that makes the system better but won't bring in revenue. And Town of Benson does have a documented need for a new elevated storage tank. We've had to write letters saying that we can provide some emergency storage from our system just to support theirs. So that's a project that will allow us to have more emergency supply back to our system. The Town of Clayton is a tricky one. We've been working on the interconnected meters relocation strategy for a long time, and they prepared a study to get us started. And we actually were talking to them last Wednesday. We meet regularly, and we were discussing this project. They would be happy with any amount of money, they said, to advance this. They'll take every bit you'd give them, but you know, this is a project that's going to be multi-year and multi-stage, so there would be opportunity to do a portion of it with this funding. The big tripping point with that is we don't, in the past, the board and management, county management, has not been supportive of turning over customers to towns if it's going to significantly affect their rates. So if they were to purchase a water line and purchase and supply, take over the customer base along that water line, if it was going to double their rates, in the past that hasn't been supported by the board and county management for good reason. So we have those details to work out. If any customers are transferred, but there are a lot of areas where we can work around transferring any customers and get some of this advanced, and I think that was the big consideration there. I don't remember which other projects you listed.
The Selma was the water line upgrade, which I think kind of goes with the Pine Level if it's upgrading water lines.
I would say they had two projects, and one project was actually more expensive. But as I got to talking to the town of Selma, they said anytime we can do a grant to get water projects done, that's better because it's hard to get funding for those type of projects. So they opted for the lower amount, and so that's why the committee chose the lower amount of the two projects that they said.
Okay, and the last one was the Four Oaks bulk wastewater capacity purchase. So
I understand your intent, Mr. Chairman. It sounds like they have done their research and bring these recommendations. In other words, what we're talking about, let's do, I think we've already done.
So I think I agree, but I think there's some. I mean, if we have money left over, Princeton, I'll just say Princeton. We've been generous to Princeton outside this program is a consideration, and then Benson, if the mayor and his board is happy with the $500,000 out of the $2.5 million request, then I'm okay with that one. But right now, the two that I'd like to think through a little bit and work through a little bit more are Princeton and Clayton. So the rest of them, I think.
Let's put those in the next round then.
Yeah, and then we can reevaluate Princeton, and I'll get Commissioner Brazel over there to get his thoughts on that one. But I know for Clayton, in my conversations there, I think So a little more discussion on that one would be appropriate.
We would, I mean, we can take it back and look at the other projects that you may have concerns about, or if you would wish to do, and go ahead and get these started, and you could do a round two to put these things in there, or we can make further recommendations of different amounts in the projects that you have concerns about. And we can talk about those over the next couple of weeks and come to the board in January if need be. Whatever the board would like to do.
I'm okay with the, let me see, the Kinley Pine, with the amounts they requested, not the up to $500,000. If they get prices in and it's, or that gives a little leeway for us to.
That was kind of the thinking, is that the reason why we did the up to is in case a $330,000 project ended up being $350,000.
Right.
That it would be.
Right.
We would still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the reason why.
I would be
So
good
can
with
we
that.
find a win-win here somewhere?
Well, what if we approve these as recommended with the exclusion of a couple of them to be looked at in round two?
And I would again defer, Mr. Mayor, do you want to be in the second evaluation, or are you happy with the?
The reason we,
If you would come up to the microphone there, you'll have to readjust it.
the reason we put the $2.5 million for a water tower in this request was that Four Oaks and Dunn also have a need for a water tower. And we were going to do those together so that the engineering says that if you get them on the same sphere, you don't have to pump as much water. You have a lot more movement. So that's why we put $2.5 million. The other reason is we're in the south end of the county, and we don't get any of these $30,000 and $40,000 grants. But this is one that would really help us in the other part that we're working on, and that is the sewer. So we'd like to stay in to try to get the $2.5 million. Any questions?
Thank you.
To just make sure, so you would kind of defer, want to be in that second consideration? Okay. And the only one I have left out and not on it is Smithfield's kind of in that same boat, asking for $1 million, and we're looking at a half, so if I would throw that in there. But the four easy pickings for me are Kinley, Pine Level, Selma, and Four Oaks, and I know, yes.
Mr. Scott is here. I wonder if he wants to, the input on it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll ask you the same question. Do you want to look behind door number 2, or you want to take door number 1? I guess that's the.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we look at this project that we're working on, it's a $17+ million project, so it's a large project, and it's going to benefit us. Everybody knows that there's a water issue throughout the entire county, so it's going to benefit the county as well. So any assistance you can provide would be extremely beneficial for us and the county as a whole. So we would ask that you reconsider our original request for $1 million.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for helping me out on that one.
Not a problem, Mr. Chair.
All right, so anybody have any issues with the Kinley, Pine Level, Selma, and Four Oaks request? And I think Manager Hester has a comment on Pine Level.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a conversation with the mayor of Pine Level late last week, and he mentioned the $5.5 million, and then the recommendations. He said if there was any further consideration for funds for them to purchase wastewater capacity, they would like to be considered for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing, when you go into these small towns and you put the remote readers, the modern, and that's getting to be the status quo in a lot of places. These meters, to give you an example, the last one we put in was in Micro, North Carolina, about 3-4 years ago. Their water collection in the first month was $9,800 higher than it had been. There's a lot of, it's brought a much more accurate system for measuring the water. So these towns will get a benefit from that, and water that's being lost and not being paid for is a lot of times comes from our treatment plant. So just keep that in mind.
I'd just like to offer up that in other funding opportunities that we pursue in the county, you can come back with the same project in round 2. If anybody wanted to consider taking the bird in hand right now and applying for the same project in round 2, that is something that the board could offer or decide just to not consider the whole project now and put it in the second round. But that's how we've gone back several times to the state for the same project and
Yeah, I
added
think
to our
I kind of think that's what I heard, that
Yeah.
they're going to take door number 2 and understand that there probably won't be a change if that what they see here today would be a minimum, but there's an opportunity to do something different. So can I get somebody to make that in the form of a motion for those 4 towns at the project cost amounts?
You're talking about Kenley, Pine Level, Selma, and 4 Oaks?
Yes, sir.
I move, Mr. Chairman, I move we approve these grants as recommended by the staff of those 4 towns.
I would just say the staff included it up to 500,000. So
Yes.
I would,
Right.
okay. So my preference would be at the amount of the project cost, not to go over. So if you,
Right.
So you would amend your motion to?
Yes,
At
yes.
their cost.
The project cost not to exceed our amount.
Yes, sir.
All right. So do I have a second? All right. Sound like, no second? Any other motions, or are we just going to reconsider it all in January?
Well, the motion is pretty good with the exception. I think the ones that did apply, go ahead and let them move on also, even though it's not, maybe they can apply in a second round, but go ahead and move on with those projects is what my humble suggestion would be.
Are you saying follow this recommendation entirely?
Well, I think the committee has done a great job, and they're not going to pay $500,000 for a 300-some-odd project if they don't have bills for them. I'm pretty sure.
I agree with you. I wanted to do that to start with.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen. But in those cases, I think that the chairman has questions by, we can move on to second round and let that address, okay? But that's the majority of whatever you want to do. So therefore, I'll make that a motion to see if we can get that one to float, that we move forward with the projects that, as submitted, and therefore open up for a second round for further grants.
For all towns.
For all towns.
Okay.
Now, we'll get a second on that one.
Do I hear?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I'll just add that's about $300,000. Well, actually, if you take Princeton out of the whole loop, that's about $600,000 that we're going to commit that we won't have a chance to look for the folks in round 2. But that's my 2 cents. But we'll go ahead and.
Is this discussion time?
It is discussion time.
I'm going to go back and say the same thing I said before. I really think that we could dial this thing down and make it more custom for the areas. Just like, Smithfield needs $1 million, and instead of just cookie cutting $500,000 out there. I mean, I think if you funded the projects as they were submitted, for example, the $330,000 for the water upgrade, then that leaves the rest of that money in a pot to be able to divvy it out to other places. I just think I viewed this as more of a true grant process, where if you ask for something, then we fund up to a certain amount toward that project, and not just a blanket. I mean, we could have done that in the beginning. We could just give every town $500,000 and been done with it. That was not the intent of the program, at least not when I voted for the $5.5 million. That's just my 2 cents. We can do whatever the board wants to do, but I would like to see us go back and relook at this, and I think the committee's done fine, but I think that from my perspective, I'd like to see it be dialed down a little bit more strategic for each area. Clayton, Smithfield, some of these that are not even close to what they're asking for. And I'm not saying we could fund the whole thing, but, perhaps we could do a little better than what we're doing.
Yeah, but in the object of being fair to everyone, to all the towns, that have applied. You know, this is what that's what we put out there. Now, I have no concern that the committee would approve any grant and that's what they spent their time doing. I wouldn't have, any concern that they're going to spend one dime more than that. And what's left is what's left. But I'm saying everybody should operate on the same playing field, all of them. So if some are going to have a second round, all should have a second round, in my opinion.
I'm not sure we're arguing. I think we're all kind of going towards the same place, but in my opinion, this says 330 would go to Selma only, not 500.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, there's going to be excess funds. And at that point, open it up for a second round.
Yeah. And
we've got the first round behind us.
President or anybody, Pine Level, or anybody needs more.
So let me ask a question on that. If you're not expending the amount of money that was set aside to grant, why are we going to do it in a second round? You're already leaving projects that are not funded. You're just going to make them come back and go through the process yet again?
The whole thing was only 500,000.
What do you mean not funded?
Available.
Why is it only 500,000?
That's what we agreed. We had $5.5 million, 11 towns, 500,000 per.
Well, then why didn't we just give 500,000?
that was not the intent,
That was not the intent of the
It was
project.
up to.
Yeah, it was not and it was an average number. We put 5.5. It was not. I agree. If it was 500,000 each town, we would have been done with this 6
we
months
wouldn't be
ago.
having this conversation.
No, that's not. We said up to $5 million per town, and we didn't know. I don't think I, as commissioner, had the vision of where or what any towns are going to apply for.
Right.
I don't
And
remember.
I think we set the limit. The table was set at 500,000.
I missed that
No,
part.
I missed that part too.
I didn't get that at all.
If we didn't say we're going to fully grant everybody 500,000, that's what the level was set at.
I don't remember that part. I'm not saying it didn't have, I just don't.
And we as a committee may have understood that as well. And
Well, I
we did,
know I've said it more than one time that $500,000 was an average. It was not the one for each town. So I have said that more than one time. Should have been fairly clear to staff that was the direction. And so when we come back and everything's up to 500,000, we wasted 6 months.
the total projects were 3.7 million, and when there was multiple projects, we didn't feel real comfortable based on what it was in the beginning to start allocating more funds for one town than the other, because we didn't know if we'd be able to have enough money to fund based on what was allocated to like Benson. So we thought that we would do the 500,000, and if there was a round two, then we could do additionals after that.
And I may have just missed it, but I did not take it that way at all when we approved this. I thought that if a town comes in with a project that's $300,000, and another town comes in with a project that's $600,000, based on the validity of the project and their ability to do it, I mean, they could be granted that. I mean, I don't see why.
I'm not opposed to that, but I'd hate to hold up somebody who's ready to go forward for another month.
Well,
Let's just go ahead and
I
get it done.
misunderstood that. I think we would not have enough money if every single town had applied. So that's why the level was set at $500,000. If we multiplied what was out there that each town could apply for. Now, granted, some towns didn't apply for anything, so therefore that money is available. But I think if we didn't set that threshold, Mayor Medlin might apply for $2.5 million, and so that was my fully understanding of the way it went.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. I think the motion was to, tell me what your motion was again.
What's written on the page?
So to follow the staff's recommendations.
But I included second round in there.
Yeah, if there's
For the
excess
additional
funds.
1.5.
There's an additional, actually, based on the actual dollar amount that presented, 1.7 million.
Okay.
And it may be, for example, that Smithfield comes back and gets the rest of that.
Did that, and so we don't have any clear misunderstanding, that $1.7 million should be based on the validity of what they can do with it. Everybody agree with that?
Right. And then,
Yeah, a viable project.
okay, and then the Town of Princeton project is okay as well. So, all right, we have a motion and a second to proceed with the recommendations of the staff. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Could you raise your hands, please? Four. All right, any opposed? All right, carries 4-3. All right, next up, while we're on talking about infrastructure, next up is our solid waste Phase 4 MSW Landfill Area 2 and C&D Landfill Closure Project. And we have Peter Shear with Smith Gardner here to speak to us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see y'all. Thank you for having me here today. I'm here to present the results of our landfill closure bid and our recommendation for moving forward on the project. We have 2 landfill units at the landfill facility which have reached capacity, and closure is required by the state solid waste rules, as these units won't be laterally expanded in the future. Total area to be closed is approximately 45 acres. Included in the project is borrow area development and some sediment basin work. On October 13th, we received 3 bids. The low bid of just over $12.5 million was submitted by Thale Construction Company of Hillsboro, who we believe is well qualified to perform this work. Thale's bid was, however, approximately 7% higher than predicted in our recent opinion of probable cost, and higher still than prior estimates due to the unfortunate inflationary environment that we're in. Thus, we met with county management after the bid to discuss options. As a result of those discussions, we worked with Thale to identify both scope reduction items and some cost-saving alternates. The scope reduction items were those that could be performed by the county and/or were supplemental to the closure project and thus could be delayed. The cost-saving alternates, while minor, are items which provide some savings yet result in no loss of performance. Considering both the scope reduction items and the cost-saving alternates, we are recommending award of the project to Thale at a construction budget of $12,656,215, which includes a $500,000 contingency line item. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. McLam to comment on available budget.
Solid Waste has done a great job raising the additional funds through their funding model to pay for this project out of their cash reserves. We don't anticipate them using all their cash reserves based on the way their funding is going, but I am recommending that the general fund potentially, if needed, transfer up to $2 million to the solid waste fund to continue operations if they need it at a later point in the year. It's just sort of a safeguard in case they deplenish all their funds based on funding for this project. It may not happen, but it kind of just alleviates having to come back to you again, but if that's the case, I definitely will.
All right, any questions for Mr. McLam?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to go on record that I think it's a dangerous precedent to be using general funds to fund entrepreneurial division, and that's not the way it's supposed to be set up, and that's not the way it's supposed to be done. And if the solid waste needs additional revenue, then they should look to their customers and not to the general taxpayer.
All right. Any other discussion?
I don't totally disagree with Commissioner Smith, but at this point in time, when you've got to close it, I wonder what's the alternative. I mean,
And it could be
what
set
are the
up
funding model? Borrowing money?
Yeah.
I just threw that out as a question. I don't.
So right now, we don't know if we need that $2 million.
No, I mean, I'm not sure that they'll need it. It just is just a sort of a safeguard. If you don't want to do this, I can come back if they do later in the year. They're going to deplenish most of their funds. but I think that their funding model is set up. We've put off some capital projects that, other capital projects passed this year that were budgeted for. So I think they're going to be okay. I just sort of making the board aware that they may have some funding issues this year, and if they do, without any other source of revenues right now.
Mr. Chairman, I don't understand. I mean, I just find this almost comical. I don't understand that if we have an enterprise fund who has customers who are supposed to pay for the service that they're getting, and we have some potential in the future, maybe, shortfall, why the first place we don't go is for that enterprise fund to review its structure of charges to its customers and go there first without going to the easy button of we're just going to tax the average taxpayer who may or may not get what those enterprise funds are doing. It just goes against the system as it's set up.
And I would agree with that. I mean, we have enterprise funds, utilities enterprise fund, this is enterprise fund, and I think it was only 7% more than the engineer's estimate, and I don't know how much more from the before that, but we're not that far off, and I agree. I have a hard time with the $2 million coming out of general fund without us. Now, how long is the construction project estimated?
It's going to take about a year.
About a year. So we have time to figure that out.
Sure, yeah, we do. We'll monitor.
And the timing is such that we can't put it off, can we?
Can't really put it off. The state,
Peter, do you mind?
state solid waste rules require that we begin our closure activities. If we, say, phase the project into multiple phases, that still puts that in question as far as regulatory action. We have maintenance of the sites by county staff that would have to occur. Just a number of things that make it worthwhile to proceed.
Mr. Chair, I want to be sure, I'm not in any way suggesting to put the project off. There are multiple opportunities to fund it. You can either review the charges to the customers. The general fund can loan money, as we've done in the past, and get that loan repaid in the future. There's a myriad of ways to protect the average, ordinary, blue-collar taxpayer in this county who's paying too much taxes as it is, and to think that we're going to use the taxes to bail out an enterprise fund.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question about it. The modeling for the fees for that enterprise fund. I mean, I'm sure that there's some speculation based on current and future needs, financial needs. Is there a modeling program that's in place that we look at that each budget year when we adopt the fees?
We do.
And I know it's a delicate balance.
We have to consider the competition that we have and everything else. So, yeah, we do look at that. I think that my opinion is they're going to have enough to get them through the year, and I think they're going to have enough going forward. We have put off a couple capital projects, but to your point, it is something that need to be looked at in the budget, because we need to be able to have funds raise funds again for some additional closures and things that we may have in the future.
Yeah, because we know those things are coming in the future. So there's got to be a funding mechanism in place. And I agree with Commissioner Smith. I'm never a fan of subsidizing an enterprise fund with ad valorem taxes.
I don't mind. We can certainly set this up if we end up having to do anything as a loan program to that fund.
I would suggest that if we approve this and move forward, because we need to, that we leave that portion of it out and address it if the need arises, and then it could be approved as a loan to the enterprise fund with a payback to the general fund.
Yes, sir. We have done that in the past.
Would that be?
I would agree with that.
I can make that in the form of a motion if that's what we need to do, and I think it's got to be more complicated than that.
Yes, sir.
Award the county landfill Phase 4A Area 2 closure project to Thale Construction. Let's see. Let me skip all that part. Solid waste. Yeah, okay, that's it. Award the project to Thale Construction. And then if the shortfall exists, Mr. Chairman, then we'll come back and address that.
Okay. All right, we had a motion Is there, you second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I have one question. Will this closure enable us to capture more methane?
Yes, it'll make it more efficient. In fact, we're working with the gas developer. We're putting in some wells with the actual closure project, but they'll be hooking into those and getting some more gas.
Good.
Increasing that project potential.
Good. All right, any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion to award the contract, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I want to call for a revote on the last agenda item. I was in the affirmative, and I would like to have a revote, and I believe I'm entitled to do that.
Is that on the school bond or
No.
the town?
The town.
Okay. So,
That's under, that would be for the town infrastructure grant projects, and that would be motion 14 to reconsider under your board rules. And it is allowable if it's done at the same meeting and it's made by someone who voted in the affirmative.
okay. So do we need to go through the motion process, or we just call for the revote?
He's made a motion to reconsider, and so you need to go through that process, and then you can reconsider the matter.
All right. Do I hear a second to his motion to reconsider?
I don't think we need a second.
Okay.
I think I'm entitled to do that, and I think all we have to do is call for the vote.
I just want to make sure we get it right the next time, so.
So I don't want to disagree with Mr. Smith, but my Robert's Rules cheat sheet says that a motion to reconsider does require a second.
Second. All right, now we have a second. Any other discussion? So all in favor of revoting on the issue with the grants to the town, please say aye.
Probably raise your hands.
Yeah, let's raise hands. Okay, let's do that. All right, so that, what was that, 5-2? 5-2. Any opposed, raise your hands. Steve. All right, there we go. All right, so I guess that carries. So now we'll just move right straight to the vote on the, good God, I don't know. So are we voting to just?
Motion to
Basically,
approve
do the
this.
same motion again.
My motion, yeah.
In a second, correct?
Okay,
You're just
I got it. So, all right, so now we're reconsidering the motion.
Correct.
We're going to call for a revote on the,
Municipal funding recommendation.
and to doing, following the recommendations. So all in favor of following the staff's recommendations, please raise your hand. I switched in a hurry. All opposed to that, please raise your hand. So that goes 2-5 with Stevens and Godwin voting.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you a question
Oh,
now?
I'm sorry.
Where are we with this recommendation? I mean, what does the committee do next? So where are we?
So in my opinion, we've got to go back and open that back up for another motion, or we can.
Or you can take it under advisement.
I'll make a motion that we table this matter for further consideration by the board.
Second.
All right.
What you wanted to start off?
Well, I was going to try to move some forward. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this?
Yeah, I've got a
Dead horse.
discussion.
All right.
Pretend you're a town out there in our county, and this has been going on for how long, Mr. Manager?
I threw 6 months out there. so
6 months.
That's why.
So we set a committee in place to bring back a recommendation. They brought the recommendation. So where are we now? We've advanced nowhere.
We're taking their recommendation under advisement, and then we'll make a final decision.
So what's going to happen between now and then? And when is that going to be? I would be very frustrated if I was one of the towns. That's all I can say. Especially if I had something that was well within the purview of the grant.
With all due respect, I see no need if we're moving at the same intent of what we said we're going to do, in which we sent out to the towns what our intention was, and now we want to come back and take it back.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
think we're taking it back.
I'm not sure there's clarity on this board about what we intended. I really don't want to get into it today. I think I disagree with a lot of what was said, and I just think we need to, this is real dollars, and we need to be sure we do it right.
And I agree that there's, I understand the town situation, if you should let me finish my thought.
I'll let you finish.
All right, thank you, sir. That I understand the urgency on some of these projects for the town, but also there was not a date certain that we were going to award these things. So the fact that it's going to take another month into January for us to make sure we're all on the same page and understand it, I'm fine with that, with apologies to the town for, but this is we were to hear today the recommendations of the staff, and that's what we did. So any other, there you go, your turn.
Well, I just simply say the fairness is what we, I understand Commissioner Smith's concerned about, the money that we're spending, but my goodness, we've done through the process. But I go ahead and call for a vote, but I'm going to be on the other end of it anyway. So, all right, go ahead. You switch places.
Commissioner Bradshaw, I'm not expressing an opinion about whether we spend, how much we spend. I just have a different recollection of the purpose of the program, and I agree with the chairman that we need to consider it and get it right.
I understand, but in my opinion, it is right, so,
Well, that's why you get the vote.
I get the vote, right.
All right. So all in favor of tabling this for further discussion, please say aye. Raise your hand. Let's just raise your hand one more time since we're on a roll here. All right. So we have 5, and all opposed, raise your hand. 5-2. All right.
It went south fast, didn't it?
It did. I can honestly say I've never participated in one that went one into the other that quick. So, Chandra, I think it's your turn to come up here and get us out of this. And hopefully this will go better. But talk about our county wastewater master plan.
Well, the good news is we're not asking to spend any money today.
Thank you. That is good.
We have, Kim Rainier and I are going to present this together, but this is our master wastewater plan update. This is a follow-up to some of our prior discussions from a few months ago where the board requested, okay, well, what is the master plan? How are we moving forward? So I'm going to start out with just a brief history, some evaluation of how we have determined and analyzed future demands and needs, and then Kim will follow up with the full plan on how we're going to move that forward, what our plan is to move that forward, and some of the considerations that we use to make that determination. You may recall our current interlocal bulk wastewater agreements. This is where we provide service to the original towns of Smithfield, Selma, Pine Level, and 4 Oaks. It's dated 1979, and we've been working with those towns to update those agreements. We do have updated agreements currently signed and in place with Pine Level and 4 Oaks. We're still working with Smithfield and Selma on those agreements. But the original agreement in 79, essentially the county assumed ownership and operation of the treatment facilities from the town of Smithfield and the town of Selma, and the county agreed to operate the wastewater treatment plant that was currently rated at 1.5 million gallons a day. Then the county expanded it to 3.29 million gallons a day and improved treatment processes. And we were to operate that plant and provide service, bulk wastewater treatment and transmission services to those towns. At that time, that is when the plant became known as the Central Johnston County Wastewater Treatment Facility. After 1979, there have been multiple upgrades and expansions to the plant. Some of the projects were to improve treatment processes, some of them to comply with changing regulations. As you know, they've changed significantly since 1979. And then other of the projects were to expand treatment capacity, add additional capacity at the plant. The most recent plant expansion was completed in 2009. That is when we expanded the treatment capacity to 9.5 million gallons a day and finished and upgraded our biosolids facility that is located out at the landfill. In late 2015, early 2016, we started the plan to complete an expansion to the plant, to the point of our full NPDES discharge permit, which is 13.5 million gallons a day. We were going to add this 4 million gallons a day on that existing plant site. It was going to be tight, and we probably needed additional land area, but we started the layout. We hired a consultant to start that process. Well, as we all know, 2016, October, we had Hurricane Matthew. The plant was flooded, the plant was underwater, the plant was offline for over a week. At this time, this was the first time our plant had flooded and been inundated completely. Access to the plant had been cut off several times in the past, and we know that would continue to be a problem. But this was the first time the plant was completely flooded. So, of course, after that event, we started evaluating other options and considering what is the best path forward. You can see on the floodplain mapping for our existing wastewater treatment plant, the hatched area on the map there is the floodway, not the 100-year floodplain, but the floodway. And you can see it's a little difficult to see on the map, but with the aerial photo, you can kind of see the white outline. That's the dike and the path around the plant, and then the facilities are in the middle there. You can see the structures located in the middle of that. The solid blue is the 100-year floodplain. So obviously, when we go back and look at this, we know we are in the middle of the floodway and the floodplain, and this is not going to get better over time. So this is where we started reconsidering future plant options and how do we move forward. Now, how we move forward with, kind of where we are now is, in making these decisions to move forward, it's important to analyze our future demands and, of course, our current plant capacity so we determine how much we need and when. Those demands are based on our service area. We, of course, provide bulk wastewater service to those 4 regional towns I mentioned earlier. And since after that 1979 agreement was signed, since then, the county also entered into bulk treatment agreements with the town of Clayton, Aqua, which is a private utility company at Flowers Plantation, and Carolina Water Service, which is another private utility company that serves Winston Point outside of Clayton. The county also provides retail sewer services for customers that are currently within the town of Wilson Mills, as the town does not have their own system. And the county also has additional retail customers throughout the county, but generally these are going to be located in our outlying residential sewer service areas in the Interstate Highway Interchange District. Of course, we have a very restrictive residential sewer service policy that really limits public sewer service to these areas. So these service areas are very important as we evaluate how we move forward and look at future demands and needs. In 2021, the average flow to our wastewater treatment plant was 6.7 million gallons a day. Currently, y'all have seen these numbers. These are numbers we provide routinely with monthly updates. Right now, we have 2.39 million gallons a day that is permitted but not yet tributary to the plant. And then we have subtract those numbers, you have about 0.37 million gallons a day that are left that could be permitted to the existing wastewater treatment plant. But we also have promised that is capacity that's not yet purchased, but promised per contracts, 0.34 million gallons a day. So as you can see, that's essentially promised out most of the capacity at the existing wastewater treatment plant. As far as anticipated growth and future projections, for the town of Clayton, based on our conversations and consultations with the town, they're constructing their own plant. They're not anticipating purchasing future additional capacity in the county's plant. The same for Aqua at Flowers Plantation. Currently, they have not requested additional capacity purchase in the county's future treatment facilities. And then Carolina Water Service, that's the one with the outstanding contract with the 0.34 million gallons a day, and that's limited to that. We've received no additional requests from them. The proposed agreements that I mentioned earlier with Smithfield, Selma, Pine Level, and Four Oaks does have a requirement in those that we work with the town so that every 2 years they provide updated wastewater projections to the county. This will allow the county to include their projections in our future demand projections and planning so that we can ensure we meet their future needs. We really hope this provision in this agreement and the opportunity to work closer with these towns will give us that ability to work much closer with them and to be able to have those plans in place to meet their needs. The current projections are essentially from what the county has modeled and what we've projected. Since we don't have some of those projections from some of those towns, but the current model increases wastewater from, well, essentially doubles our wastewater treatment needs for over the next 20 years. And so the expected growth for this additional doubling of growth, it will come from county retail customers, but our county retail customer growth is going to be very critical how we project that based on what happens with the new land use plan, and if that determines or drives any changes or revisions to the current residential sewer service policy. So that there could be significant, the current planning assumes the policy very similar to what it is now and potential future residential growth in those same areas. But any changes to that certainly will change demand projections. We do continue to include the customers of the town of Wilson Mills in the county as county retail customers. As you are aware, we have had conversations with the town of Wilson Mills and had some contract language back and forth on what the future may look like if the town would operate their own system in the future. But for now, their projections are included in the county's retail projections. And our 20-year projections for the county retail customers include a growth factor going from approximately 1.4 million gallons a day to 5.2 million gallons a day over the next 20 years. So the next chart essentially summarizes those numbers I just talked about with the bulk customer growth and the county retail.
Can I ask you just to make sure, so when you say county retail, that is unincorporated areas?
Right, that would be any areas that the county provides direct retail service to.
Separate from Wilson Mills?
No, it includes
Wilson Mills.
Yeah, oh, it does include
It
Wilson.
includes ours plus Wilson Mills.
Okay.
Right. And it includes, of course, commercial, industrial, residential, combined. Everything's combined there. The chart with the wastewater influent predictions, this pulls that information together, and you can see our growth projections. We've got several different scenarios ranging from, modest growth, median growth, to high growth. But as I mentioned, we are essentially looking at a doubling in the wastewater treatment capacity over the next 20 years. And I'm going to turn it over to Kim to talk about how we address that and meet those needs.
Thank you. Chandra just did a great job letting you know how we got started and where we've been. I'm going to go back and rewind a little bit to 2016. Where our philosophy was to maximize the potential of our existing wastewater treatment facility. The growth in the county was a lot more modest in our planning back in 2016. We thought we could expand the plant till its full 13.5 capacity, and that would carry us a good long way. Hurricane Matthew, as Sandra showed, changed that, and then the growth in the county took off. So we're in an entirely different place now. And to inform our decisions moving forward, we worked with Dewberry to do a floodplain analysis at the current location. The floodplain mapping has raised the flood level in this area each of the last two iterations. And we wanted to do a study to make sure we weren't going to find ourselves building new infrastructure in an area that would, in the future, be under the flood zone again. So we had Dewberry do this study. They analyzed the whole area around our treatment facilities, and we provided that information to Hazen, and we came up with a whole new plan. So in this plan, it's a 2020 report from Hazen. We looked at three options. Expand at the current facility, construct a new treatment plant across the river, or construct a new treatment plant next to the biosolids and landfill that we're calling the 210 wastewater treatment facility. Option one was to expand at the existing plant. That has advantages. So the staff's in one location. You can reuse some of the existing structures, but it does have disadvantages. Much of that plant is over 30 years old and will need replacement over the next 30 years. It requires significant collection improvements to get the wastewater to this location. It's in that rising floodway and floodplain of the Neuse River. It has a limited footprint. To expand there, because it is inside a dike, you have to do significant earthwork, including no-rise certifications, wetland permitting, and all that. And then any new structure you have to build out there, because of the soil conditions, has to be set on piles. So it's more expensive to build there. It's more expensive to get the land you'll need. So those are the cons to that one. Option 2 was to build new capacity across the river. And that was attractive because the county had known that we weren't going to be able to build at the central Johnston County facility forever because of that dike and its precarious location, and purchased the land across the river. We liked that because we thought if we could get some crossings underneath the river, we could share the infrastructure in limited fashion and keep the plants as a synergistic operation. But when we did that study with Dewberry in 2017, we realized that site was limited due to the floodplain. We'd be in the top highmost corner. That crossing across the river got a lot longer. That site is also landlocked. And so we were going to have to build a commercial grade roadway and bring power back to it. And so then there's the issue of getting the wastewater to it, significant collection improvements. And it would be a separately staffed site. There's no bridge from one to the other. You have to drive all the way around Galilee Road. So option 3, which became our preferred option, is the 210 wastewater treatment facility. Again, it's on county-owned land, and it was suitable for the use. It was already zoned for it. Our biosolids operations were already out there. It's adjacent to the landfill. So the roadway access is perfect. And there's that synergy with the biosolids where you can share the staffing and have less pumping of sludge, which is a challenging thing to do. Plus, there's room out there. There's elbow room. There's room to expand to 24 million gallons a day and beyond. And with the growth curve we ended up on, that got more and more attractive. It's a little closer to the major wastewater producers, so the conveyance improvements that are required are a little shorter. And it's completely outside of the floodplain, which made us feel a lot more comfortable. The con to this is there's a long route to the discharge point onto the Neuse River. And it again, just like all the other one, requires significant collection system improvements. But to dig into that, that 2020 study compared the costs of all those options. And option 3, while it wasn't the cheapest for the initial construction, ends up being the cheapest in the long term because there are no options to keep expanding within option 1 past the 13.5. So we are moving forward with option 3 here, the 210 wastewater treatment facility. We're working on going ahead with the minor improvements to the existing central Johnston County facility, and that'll improve the headworks and all that, and will serve us long-term even after it's decommissioned into a wastewater pumping system. And then for all these, we have to get nitrogen credits. That's included in the report. In the Neuse River Basin, you have to have a nitrogen allocation to support the amount of pounds you put in the river every year. So, we're moving forward with the 210 wastewater treatment facility. There is the site plan for it, and we've talked about this before, that it's designed to be added in trains and section by section. It's all laid out there, a plan to get to 24 million gallons a day. So it's well thought out. It's the next expansion projects will be a lot easier to build and can reuse some of the structures we're building in this first phase. So this first phase is pretty expensive, but a lot of the pieces are sized for already to be able to handle the second phase. So with this in place, we have a plan to meet the long-term demands that Shander had presented earlier. So we're currently at a 9.5 MGD capacity and only seeing around 7.6 million gallons at the plant. That's our starting point there. By the time we get to the end of 2024, we have our new facility online. At that, our permit's currently written that we will only treat 7.5 million gallons at the central Johnston County facility, and we'll treat 4 at the new 310 facility. But we all know it's currently rated at 9.5. So if the growth curve gets really steep and we get nervous, we can add the nitrogen to our permit and re-rate that to 9.5 and go to the full 13.5 capacity for a temporary period of time. Chandra's already working on that nitrogen strategy and purchasing those credits and getting them online through contract. And the issue with treating 9.5 at the Central Johnston County plant is there's not enough transmission capacity to bring all that there. So new transmission would have to be built directly to the plant to get that all in there. But in the future, our goal is to be able to get out of that precarious position at the Central Johnston County facility and decommission some of the older pieces. And so we'll be moving to expand the 210 facility to an 8 MGD facility and have the Smithfield located plant, the Central Johnston County plant, go to 8 MGD. Then we'll have a full 16 MGD capacity. And then we'll continue on in that fashion step by step, where we have right now, when you look at the end of 2024 on this graph, it's looking tight, and we're all feeling that right now. We were delayed by the hurricane and some regulatory complications, but we're hoping never to be quite this tight again. You see, we have a little more breathing room in the future planning this out. And we have a little flexibility in the short term here built into this plan in case a big project comes and we do want to re-rate the plant and be able to accommodate something like that in this short term. So the next slide just shows some of the major conveyance pieces that go along with this treatment facility. If you've driven past the airport recently or down Swift Creek Road, we're responsible for that. And you recently awarded the project, the orange line on this map, to take the discharge from the new facility all the way to the Neuse River. And we're going to use that site across the river to support the very end of the treatment process, the cascade aerator and the dechlorination out there. So we're moving forward. We're planning for the growth of the towns as well, not just planning for getting flow to this new treatment facility. We have worked a way to divert the South Selma Regional Wastewater Pump Station, which will take the part of Selma's flow and Pine Level's flow out of a shared interceptor, which will return that infrastructure to Smithfield and give them more options in the Buffalo Creek Basin. This will also accommodate a lot of growth in Selma for the Eastfield development. We're upgrading the Pine Level force main and the wastewater pump station, which doubles and later triples the amount of flow that can be received from Pine Level. We're working on a major overhaul of the Selma EQ and pumping facility and the force main there, and that will collect the majority of the flow from Selma and Pine Level and divert it around the Buffalo Creek wastewater pump station, another pinch point in Smithfield system, and allow a lot more capacity there. And then we also have 4 Oaks sewer diversion projects. That's 4 different projects that will allow the wastewater from 4 Oaks to not only continue to go to Benson, but to be able to send a significant portion back to the central plant. So in order to keep this plan moving, we have projects under construction. The 210 wastewater treatment facility is under construction. I'm going to knock on wood. It's currently on schedule. It's supposed to finish up in mid-24. But a lot can happen in a project this large. The biosolids and dewatering facility is also under construction and on schedule. The landfill sewage pumping station in Force Main is under construction and on schedule. The Reedy Branch wastewater pump station, that's what you'll see up at the airport. That's the name of the creek up there. The Buffalo Creek wastewater pump station in Force Main, and the Pine Level Force Main is closing out right now. All those that are under construction, and we have all these other projects under design and permitting, including taking the plant that's currently under construction, the second phase, all the way up to 8 MGD. And a big portion of that is getting the NPDES permitting rewritten to accommodate the full build out of that plant and develop a plan to get the nitrogen that we'll need for that. So We're working hard to enact this plan. It's all based off of our capital improvements plan that you guys approved in the spring. The planning horizon on the capital improvement plan is a 20-year plan, but it's not meant to be a roadmap. It's that we have to stay on, because every day we hear about new exciting projects in the county, or a new regulation comes up, or you'll change the land use plan, or we'll work in the next presentation for the regionalization plan. So that capital improvement plan, while it has a 20-year horizon lookout from now, is only meant to be a 2 to 5 year planning document. But we do, in our planning, we look out for 20 years. So you'll be seeing that again after you do the land use plan and we look at the regionalization study and hear from the towns with their demands. With that said, do you have any questions?
I have one, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman. On that graph, Kim, where the stair steps and we got real close, what kind of gotchas are possible and what mitigation do we have readily available for those? Does that make sense?
That stair step is within the construction time for the new facility. And I'm just going to keep knocking on wood because those facilities are under construction and on schedule right now. So our risk is relatively small. And, you know, we are treating 6.7 million gallons at a 9.5 million gallon facility right now. We have a lot of flow promised, and it's coming. Can they beat us in our construction timeline? Not all of that for sure, because we're underway.
Right.
I feel pretty good about where we're at. Based on that, based on our actual flow numbers compared to what's promised and what we're seeing being constructed. But our fallback is to work with the permitting agencies and get the Central Johnston County plant re-rated if something large were to come in a very short-term basis.
Good, thank you.
I have a question. We are discharging about 6.7 million gallons a day at that plant now, right? And the 20-year long-term still calls for the Neuse River is our only go-to point. There's no considerations of any other, because of the nitrogen limits. It's just going to get more and more difficult. But every scenario includes us going to the Neuse River, correct?
Well, our plant is laid out, or we'll have an area where we can go to 24 million gallons a day. So that's what we've been working with the state on and asking for discharge limits to be able to go to that 24 million gallons a day, which, let's see, what did we top out at? Do you remember? That would get us well beyond the 20 years, the 24 million gallons a day. So that's our planning horizon.
Right.
There. We haven't gone outside of the basin currently for our flow in that planning horizon, except unless you want to consider, we do currently send flow to the town of Denton from the town of 4 Oaks, but our assumptions for this include limiting
Totally
that to
the
the
Neuse
current
River.
amount. Right.
Okay.
I had a follow-up question on that. We talked about 24 million, and you mentioned, like Kim mentioned, the permitting agencies and DEQ. And are they there yet? It seems like last time you were here, you addressed them looking at a basin-wide study they wanted to finish before they.
We've made some headway with them in meeting with us and requested some limits, and we feel like they're going to give us some of that information. We might not get the full 24 right now up front. That part may be delayed, but it appears that they will work with us on the, the phasing that we need to get, to go ahead and keep our project moving.
Yeah, and I want to ask and build on Commissioner Godwin's question. So where are, what are the major things that could go wrong and throw a monkey wrench in this? So what keeps you awake at night thinking, oh my gosh, if this happens, what are we going to do?
PFAS, PFOA, there's new regulations coming out, and we're not sure where they're going to land. The entire industry is just holding our breath, waiting to see where EPA is going to land on that. It affects our drinking water, our wastewater, and our solid waste program.
I was going to say, we can pre-treat it all at the wastewater, the
That
solid waste.
was part of the idea
yeah.
for Synergy. We're actually going to take their leachate directly to our plant in a separate pipeline that can be, sidelined into a treatment process if we need to, but that was part of our design considerations. But without knowing what regulations will come out, it's very challenging to plan for that. Hopefully, when regulations come out, so does the funding availability, but it's not always the case.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't go hand in hand, but, yeah, I would say rather than if it comes out is when it comes out for us, so. Good thing we have a good consultant on the landfill side of things as well to help us out on that. All right, any other questions? Yeah, thank you. And I will say I appreciate now we got the regionalization side. I appreciate this preceding the regionalization report we're going to get, and the fact that we're, looking beyond, Johnston County as options. So thank you both for that. Thank you. All right, next up, I think we have J.D. Solomon here. Do you have some folks out in the hall that you today?
Make sure I have them.
Yeah, they're coming in now. They're coming in familiar faces, so,
You missing
Mr.
three
Solomon.
commissioners, you want me to wait for, or two commissioners, you want me to wait for a second, or you?
I think we'll be good, but if you want to go ahead and just start slow and build up once they come back.
I will.
How about that?
I'll let Robert Chambers build up in a second.
But I will say this, and I'll stall a little bit, but I think this has been a much anticipated report, and thank you and the Black and Veatch team for the work that's gone into it. I know it wasn't easy, and it's just the beginning, but thank you for your work so far, and I can't wait to hear it and for the public to hear the results of phase one, if I can call it that. So.
Okay. So let me get going. J.D. Solomon again, as much as you guys know. The county hired my firm to manage this process. We hired, or collectively the county actually hired, Black and Veatch, which Mr. Robert Chambers is here, right behind me, and Jeff Thompson is here. Robert and I both do utility management work kind of nationally, so we've been both collaborators and competitors. And same with Jeff, he's in Raleigh. Robert lives on a plane like I used to more. But anyway, we all know each other, we've worked together, and we both bring different perspectives. But through those different perspectives, I think you're going to see a commonality from outside the county that will help you make better long-term decisions. I want to first start off by thanking all the jurisdictions. We had 13 jurisdictions participating. Some did not have utilities, some do have utilities, some had plants, some didn't. You guys have the report and the presentation, but they were all very cooperative. And similar to what Chandra and Kim just shared with you about master plans for Johnston County public utilities, all of those enterprise funds, as Commissioner Smith said earlier, have their own rate base and their own master plans. So we weren't there to criticize or dive into those master plans as much as to pull all that information into one spot. In phase one that you approved to execute was all about the infrastructure. For the first time, probably in the history of the county, we've got all that in one space in that report, all the infrastructure from all the different enterprise funds in one place, their predictions for growth and needs, both on the water and wastewater side. The next step will be to do the financial analysis, because there's a great disparity in Johnston County Public Utilities and, say, Clayton or I'll leave it to those two public utilities and their rates and some of the other rates. And so things are going to converge. So there'll be a big financial piece coming in phase two that'll be important to inform this. And then the last thing before giving it to Robert, I'd just say as introduction, arguably, if you go back 30 or 40 years with EPA, you are regionalized at least to a low level, right? You're interconnected for emergencies. You've got some wholesale agreements that are out there. But in our modern way that EPA and we look at regionalization, it is really a shared vision. It's a shared future demands. It's a shared integration of resources. Knowing just like your request earlier, every enterprise fund needs their own money, but are we looking at this county-wide and making sure we're getting the best bang for our buck, whether we're sharing people, equipment, software, or joint building plants together? That's the scope of regionalization. And it doesn't have to be merger and consolidation. This report doesn't talk about that. I think the question will be in 2050, will we need fewer wastewater utilities in the county? Probably. But how we get there and what those decisions are, there's a long way to go with that determination. This really talks about how we start coming together more county-wide, not just as separate utility enterprises. So with that, I'll turn it over to Robert to run most of this presentation.
Thank you very much, JD, County Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman. Thank you all for having us. The goal and objective of today's discussion is to just report, facilitate a general discussion. Our goal is to provide as best we can, a clear outline and understanding of what it is we've undertaken and what it is you've tasked us to do, and what we found out. What did we find? And then in understanding that, how do we go about putting together some form of a roadmap, if you decide, as you continue to look at regionalization as a whole. Okay? So jumping into what was done, what we were tasked to do. As JD highlighted, we're tasked to do an infrastructure analysis specific to regionalization in Johnston County and looking at the county as a whole. This illustration highlights the process that we typically utilize to do a study of this nature. We first of all look at the goals and objectives of the utility or the jurisdiction. Then we go about doing what we call the initial primary due diligence, which includes an operations review, organization review, infrastructure, financial, and a stakeholder. As JD highlighted, we only did the infrastructure as a part of that second step. At the conclusion of the second step, then we'll get an understanding of what are the focus areas we need to target, and then initially put together a plan to target and analyze those areas, which will then give you a roadmap of what it is you need to do if this is an option you decide to pursue. So that's the general approach that we have utilized in starting this analysis. And as I go through the deck, please don't hesitate to stop me, ask us any questions. I really want it to be as engaging as we can so that we can answer your questions as we go by. So this table just highlights, and for the most part, we know that you know this, all the jurisdictions or systems that own water and wastewater systems, respectively. I'm not going to go through it. We just wanted to highlight it because, that was one of the questions we had as we started this process. So getting into the key findings. In looking at the key findings, we wanted to highlight a few assumptions. All right? The approach is a county-wide approach. We're looking at an analysis period of 2021 through 2050, with 2050 being the target date around your capacity requirements, what it is you're trying to do, what infrastructure you're trying to put in the ground, and looking at the requirements in 2050 as the basis to understand, is there sufficient capacity? Are we doing everything now in putting together this roadmap to meet that future demand requirement? Okay? As we said, this is an infrastructure review, and the information that's presented today is based on the known and measurable data we're able to get upon conducting the analysis. The figures and illustrations we provide today are not absolute. As compared to, let's say, the previous presentation, the master planning that was just done, the figures are all in alignment, but again, it's not absolute, it's a work in progress. And there's no legal review that was done as a part of this analysis. So we just wanted to highlight that before we got going. Any questions? No?
Not so far. Okay.
First thing is water capacity. So based on FY 2021 for the entire county, the average day demand is about 18 MGD. So when you look at the use of all the systems in the county, we're at about 18 MGD. The rated capacity, mean what the system as a whole can do, is about 36.2 MGD. And in 2050, the requirement, within the system from your customers will be about 47.5 MGD. Based on all the information we're able to gather, based on stated plans and capacity that will be added and available from now until 2050, that information, presented about 65.6 MGD in what we call planned capacity. Okay? Why is this important? On a few occasions this morning, we've heard we need to look at and understand what we're going to do with water capacity, where we're going to get water from. Are we really analyzing all the options we can across all your systems? As such, what we would say as it relates to the collective demand, even though we're showing that, okay, the planned demand will meet, the planned capacity will meet the future expected demand, there's still some analysis that needs to be done to understand where that capacity is going to go. What are the requirements as it relates to permitting and so forth? Where's the load going to be on the system? How is growth going to affect industry, et cetera, okay? As it relates to the incremental supply, how you're going to supply this demand, the same topic comes back. It has to be a regional approach. It has to be an approach where everybody's at the table and you consider what's required within the region and build a plan as such, okay? And then there's always the cost implications. What will it cost to put these facilities in the ground? What will it cost to operate the facilities? And then how do you share the synergies and the value that you earn from coming together, okay? And ultimately, in understanding these requirements, you want to do it so that you somewhat have balanced rates and provide these services at the lowest possible cost to the customers you serve. So all of this is analysis and things that we have to consider as we continue to walk this path and take this journey.
So Robert, question for you before you move on is the planned capacity, the 65.6, and it may be for somebody else in the room, but have the sources of that 65.6 been identified, or is that just here's what we think we'll have by then and we've yet to identify?
The sources have not been explicitly, and I'm trying to be cautious here, not been explicitly identified because this is future plans and future anticipation, but this is what has been stated to us will be there at that time. So there still is diligence that would need to be done.
This is collectively, all the players.
Correct, collective demand for the entire.
If I can add. One of the things that drops out very upfront is that all the jurisdictions, and this may be a result of the countywide water system, but they're looking for Johnston County Public Utilities. That group of ratepayers in Johnston County Public Utilities, as Chandra and Kim said earlier, to get 65 million gallons to you. Unlike the sewer, where people are trying to kind of do it on their own a little bit more, they're kind of thinking the county public utility department, and y'all are underbacking them, is going to somehow get all this there. And there's no doubt to doubt that Chandra and Kim and the master plan will get it there. But the stakes are really high that that's going to be what they need, when they need, and they can afford it. And the public utility department is going to be able to do that. So that's starkly different than Robert will talk about with the wastewater, where people still have a little bit of the culture of the jurisdictions. We can do that on our own, So, anyway.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay. So the next slide we have, it's just highlighting the water system interconnections. We know this was a question that was raised as it relates to, what interconnections do we currently have. As you can see, the areas that are Johnston County is the major artery, and the arrows that are pointing away from Johnston County indicates that Johnston County is sending water to these facilities. You have a few jurisdictions that you have an arrow pointing from that jurisdiction to the county arteries, and that's just stating that that county, or that jurisdiction, I'm sorry, is providing water as such. The goal here is not to dwell on all the capacities, but just to provide a highlight from a system area mapping perspective, of where your interconnections are, where we would call the demand is on your system, and geographically, where, how the demand and the supply will need to be aligned geographically on your system based on the location of all the jurisdictions and the interconnections that you currently have in place. Okay. Okay, going to, any questions here?
I was just going to say, are these, I know we have our reports here, but are all these graphics somewhere in here? I've seen most of them so far.
They are.
Yes, they
But I
are.
was trying to find that
Yeah.
one, so,
Yes, they are.
oh, yeah, I see it now, okay, thanks.
Yeah, they're here.
I just skipped past some.
Okay. So moving to the sewer and the existing capacity. So for the entire wastewater system, the average annual daily demand as of FY21 is about 11.7 MGD, and that's for the entire county. In 21, we're permitted to do about 20.6 MGD, and in 2050, the demand requirement will be about 35.9. You know, as JD highlighted, there's somewhat of a bit of a different characteristic as it relates to wastewater, but the big message we want to highlight here, based on the known and measurable information we're able to gather, is that there's a planned discharge gap, an MGD gap, meaning in 2050, the planned discharge is 35.6, which is a little lower than the demand. We're not saying that the supply will not be able to meet the demand in 2050. All we're saying is based on all the known and measurable information we've gathered as of right now, this is something we need to continue to look at.
And again, this is collectively.
Collectively, yes.
Yes, and again, to reiterate, it doesn't say how we're going to pay for it. So everybody can have the plan on paper and say, we're thinking about how to do it, but they haven't got discharge permits yet. They haven't got the money to do it yet. They've just on paper in their master plan say, we kind of know we need this much. And interestingly, it matches, pretty much. That's amazing, but that's just the first step, so.
So we talked about the planned discharge and the MGD gap. From a system planning perspective, one of the things we found out and we saw is that, and with the information with the presentation that was given before this one, we see that there's a start and there's some type of a regional coordination or approach as it relates to planning for future capacity. But we were not able to identify a coordinated approach, okay? You have the question as it relates to the discharge permits on the Neuse River and where that next discharge location will be and what will it take to get the approval of that permit. That's also a consideration. One of the things we did see was inflow and infiltration. You know, so from a wastewater system perspective, whatever goes back into the sanitary sewer system is one portion of the flow called contributed flow. And then if you have a rain event, whatever seeps or runs into the sewer pipeline is I&I. So that's something you'll have to look at because, you know, you may be treating, you know, a combination of contributed flow and I&I at the plant. And, you know, and that's something you can target as it relates to potential cost savings. So that's something you'll have to look at. And then you'll have quality and quantity requirements as it relates to flow and how you address some of those regulatory requirements. So these are all things you'll have to look at and understand and then see about how to balance these competing priorities when that time comes to make the decision as it relates to how you go forward in meeting these requirements. Again, the cost implications are always evident, you know, what it will take to put these facilities in the ground and how do you share those potential synergies going forward. So the next slide highlights the wastewater system interconnections. And again, we just wanted to provide an illustration of what these interconnections look like on the system, just to highlight, you know, where the load and the flow requirements are on the system. Okay? So going into potential synergies, what did we find out? What did we see? So from a planning perspective, the biggest synergy we see that you can achieve as it relates to regionalization is looking at a county-wide approach to addressing your incremental water and wastewater capacity requirements. Okay? You have service agreements, for example, that ratify your wastewater service and water service, for example. But looking at those agreements and seeing how best, and I know that's something that staff continues to do, and seeing how best to align, realign, and sort the objectives of those agreements with your planning objectives and how you look at regionalization, that's an activity that you can consider as well. And in addition, you have varying regulatory and procedural requirements. News River, carbon credits, and we can go on and on as it relates to some of these requirements. But how do you come together regionally and address these regulatory requirements to earn and gain certain synergies that exist? So that's another finding that you could consider. And then looking at water supply and wastewater discharge. How do you source that next increment of capacity? And in sourcing it, not only look at the News River, but other potential alternatives that may exist. Okay. From an operations perspective, we see great opportunity in the uniformity of how you operate. And what does that mean? So for example, your maintenance services. In a lot of cases when you're looking at these scenarios, you may have, since it's 14 multiple different systems, each system has their own maintenance crew. There could be great synergies earned as it relates to bringing, let's say, maintenance together as a service, targeting preventative maintenance. No, it will take time, and reducing the correctives, because typically the correctives are the higher dollar maintenance requirements because you have no choice, you have no opportunity to save. But focusing on preventative and changing how you go about implementing and executing that maintenance function provides great opportunities for synergies. Establishing formal I&I reduction, or let's say a conservation program, targeting those components within your system to then achieve certain synergies and cost savings. So we see great opportunity, for example, in those areas. And then financially, establishing a regional financial plan. Establishing a regional plan that states over a certain amount of time, 5, 10 years, these are requirements, these are the revenues, these are the costs. How do we go about making sure we have the financial resources to meet these requirements? How do we make sure that we procure all potential funding opportunities that may be available to the region as you are currently doing? The thing about this is I'm saying this to you, and you all might be there and saying, we're actually doing this stuff right now, and you are. You had a great discussion earlier with regard to that funding opportunity and what to pursue. That's a part of it. But how do we continue to execute and formalize this process?
Was there an in-depth analysis of the opportunities enhanced by the regionalization as it relates to, say, state government bodies, federal government bodies? In other words, the more likelihood of gaining funding, same funding, but more likelihood because of regionalization.
Great question. So we did not complete an in-depth study as it relates to existing programs that are available and how a regionalized arrangement would enhance your ability. But what I would tell you from a scale and opportunity and a scaling perspective and an economist perspective, there's great opportunity just because of the nature of how your system is set up and the deep requirements within your system and how they can score against competition.
Right.
So not doing the in-depth analysis, but looking at it from where you stand, I would say there's great opportunity as such. Okay. So we wanted to just provide this illustration. And all we're saying here is based on your ITJ and, the density and requirements in your system and how where some of your facilities are located. We're not saying this is what a regionalized scenario could look like. We're just starting to put together the nature and the characteristics of your system to say, okay, these areas within your system operate under similar operating conditions and characteristics. We don't know what regionalization, let me step back. It's not so much what regionalization is, because you are currently under a regionalized scenario, meaning you have operating agreements and contracts, and that's typically one of the starting points of a regionalized scenario. So you are under some type of an arrangement, but we don't know where it's going to go until the in-depth analysis is completed. But we just wanted to highlight this to you based on the characteristics, for example, density, population density, facilities, et cetera, on your system. Okay? So general considerations. What do we do? How do we go forward? The first consideration would be the development of what we would call a regional planning committee. So that planning committee would have the responsibility of planning the requirements for the collective Johnston County. Okay? That committee would report to you all here, the commission. It would establish a charter, an operating charter that outlines how it operates. And then it would develop a planning framework and roadmap with objectives and goals highlighting how you go forward. Next consideration is to complete the phase 1 components of the regionalization assessment. That would be the high-level financial due diligence, the organizational review, and the stakeholder review. That would then allow you to understand what your focus areas and opportunities and synergies need to be and what you need to look at going forward. Thereafter, and not trying to put together a bunch of committees, but this is how we've done it, and we've seen it, this is how we've done it in various places. Looking at potentially putting together what we'd call a regionalization committee. And this committee's job would just be to focus on all the tasks and aspects of a regionalization. Okay? This regionalization committee would report to the planning committee. And again, you would establish a charter, and they would look at the value and how best to assess and put together a regionalization scenario within Johnston County. Thereafter, then you have the system evaluations, ratifying your service agreements, looking at how best to assess an I&I reduction program, mapping all your interconnections. Even though we've showed the interconnections, you really have to go in and map to see, where they are, how they are working, if they're working, et cetera, and then, exploring, your discharge permits, collectively, where is that next location going to be, and how best does it benefit the collective system? And then finally, exploring additional water supplies, and wastewater discharge options. How do you make sure you've exhausted all the potential requirements in the effort at maintaining your level of service and providing service at the lowest possible cost to the customers within Johnston County. So thank you all so very much for the time and the opportunity to serve. Please let us know if you have any questions.
Any questions?
Where do we start at?
I had one. You had the 4 things there at the end. What is and I know everyone's separate, but what is an estimated time frame that if we were to, say, start right now, what is a reasonable, and I'm thinking it's not months, it's more of a year's answer, but what do you see at other places that have followed this process?
So, you might want to clarify to get through the financial analysis?
So, you can break it down into, actually, there's 5. So if you want to kind of break that down and then say overall, ever how you want to break that down, I just want to know how long it's going to take.
Years to work through everything, because the big thing in all this at the end of the day, we'll do the numbers, and like any business, some numbers will be obvious, and people are going to get on board and say, that just makes sense, we got to do that. There'll be other unknowns and uncertainties in here where people have to learn to trust each other, because you're going to have to sign agreements and partner on some things without knowing everything, and sometimes that trust just takes, you guys know that, you see it in many things, it just takes a while to develop. But back of the napkin, when you get back, it looks like a little bit of this regional approach. It's not hard to do back of the napkin numbers. Clayton will spend close to 250 in capital. County's going to spend over 100 million in capital. Smithfield's done a water plant expansion. I mean, it's easy to get to $400 or $500 million pretty quick. And all that really gets everybody to about 2030. So it's not hard to imagine that by 2050, that's going to double again or even be more than that when you put the time value of money in. So this is a $500 million to $1 billion+ problem, and it really does say, how does a county this size, as it tries to grow? Certainly Johnston County Public Utilities customer base, or any customer base, cannot support all of that growth by itself. So it really does beg for more of a dedicated thing from the county commissioner to help shepherd that through at a high level collectively versus just individual utilities trying to bite at it. So I'll stop there.
And one thing to add, you are currently in a regionalized arrangement. You have service agreements that ratify the service you provide to the jurisdictions that you serve. So it's not a matter of we can put our finger on a schedule and say in 24 months you'll be fully regionalized and we'll be. It's as JD said, it's a process, and you go through the steps. We may do the analysis, and in 8 months, when we're done with the entire, to 9 months, when we're done with the entire, step 1, step 2, for example, and you say, you know what, potentially we should look at maybe how deeper of a contractual arrangement we need to have, or maybe it should be one big system or not. We don't know. But the point is we're moving together collectively, and even under the current scenario, we still have that planning framework. We have the regionalized committee that's making these decisions, because with or without regionalization, and that's a big point I know JD is making, you will have to collectively take these decisions. So the point is, how do you best put the framework in place to make sure you have all the tools so that when that, even if you don't regionalize and you're in your current form of governance, you have the tools to make these decisions. So that's why moving together and taking this regional approach will help. And if it happens that the analysis and your will is to come together, and everybody collectively, the will is to come together, it will happen. But we try not to just put a time, because we know there is a lot that needs to happen and a lot of coordination that needs to come together. Okay.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is, and I know Onslow County was a different situation 20 years ago, but that was 3 years, so I don't know if you double the time to do that nowadays, but I know that was the reference point that I think that most of us had from a presentation a couple years ago.
How do you get past and deal with the turf battles, turf wars?
So, and when you say turf wars, you mean?
Well, if you've got 5 or 6 utility directors, for example, and you look at a true regionalization where you've got one system and you only got one director, those types of battles.
So we typically don't call them battles, but I know
conflicts.
As long as you're not in the middle of it.
But what we've seen, what has worked, and fortunately, unfortunately, we've been in the middle of a lot of these deliberations, is getting everybody, first of all, to commit to being on board.
Yeah.
Being transparent with everything that we do, how we do the analysis, how we communicate, how we take decisions, and that's why the framework and the structure is important. And then taking the first step to commit, because along that path, along that value chain, there will be folks that agree with one or don't agree with another decision, but collectively you continue to move forward. And if everyone came together with the goal and objective of benefiting the county, even if one decision may not be best or may not be what that director thinks is best for the utility, collectively we all will make the decision, because the numbers don't lie, and the will and what you're trying to do for the residents the residents will hold us collectively accountable, and being transparent and communicating as such. And communication is key. You know, it's what typically works in these scenarios. And we've been through, you know, a number of these, you know, so just talking from a little experience.
Okay, yeah, and I would say along those lines that each one of the mayors has already seen a copy of the report, and I'm assuming they shared that with their directors and our board. So the communication, I think that this board sees that is critical, that, you know, we're not going to force anybody to do anything, but collectively we have to come together and figure out what's best for the county, and that each one of us, you know, Mayor Medlin back there is, you know, he's not worried about Clayton or Selma, maybe a little bit, but, you know, he's worried about the people in Benson, and that's what he's supposed to do. And so somehow we got to bring, you know, 11 towns together with the county, and then look at also 2 other folks involved in there who are bulk, and how do we bring that all in, and then not to mention the industry we have, and how do we serve them as well. So I will ask once, so if you're sitting up here, what is our next step or steps you see us needing to do to continue on with this?
So the next steps would be to complete the phase 1, complete the phase 1, the remainder of phase 1, here we go. Okay, complete the remainder of phase 1.
Okay.
Which would be the org review, stakeholder, and high-level financial. And then that will give us a collective picture of action steps of what we need to do, what we need to focus on, what we need to target for the entire system to then initiate that roadmap. And for you all to take the decision, you know, okay, now we have all the information and the facts, and we understand the implications. Do we go forward? How do we go forward? So the remainder of the preliminary due diligence, that's the next step.
Okay. Any additions to that?
We always deal in an open mind.
I think Robert,
that was the mayor, Mayor Medlin from Benson, saying they always deal with the open mind. So if you couldn't hear that at home, so.
Yeah, I mean, money talks, so obviously, kind of independently, I agree with Robert on that, to get the financial piece of this done, because certain things are going to become obvious. I do think part of that, making that obvious, is some of these agreements, the wholesale agreements, both the county and other jurisdictions with each other, they need to get more concrete, because it's one thing for people to say, I'll just give you 1 million gallons by certain sort. It's another thing if you really get down to the okay, take or pay. You pay me for that. Well, how much are you going to buy? And that gets into the financial analysis, because until somebody's got to pay for it, they'll tell you they need all this stuff sooner than later. And I think those interlocal agreements and cleaning up those boundaries really helps. And then third, this is beyond the budget and everything. I do think, looking from the outside in this transition, you do need to look at this planning effort and maybe a different position inside the county. I don't know if that sits in utilities, because the Johnston County Public Utilities, is that planning? Is that economic development? Is that in RICS directly? But there needs to be a little bit of a water and sewer czar, or a person that can really look at this holistically, because your utility staff, like in all the towns, are really taking care of their ratepayers. Somebody's really got to take the mantle. And I'm not judging anything here. Y'all look at organization all the time, but that's a consideration that may take a year to put in place, but you probably need to be thinking about that, because these are big numbers long term. These are big numbers.
So as part of this process, I know I've been talking about Cape Fear and interbasin transfer and all that, and we've had superficial discussions, some maybe a little bit less superficial, but a little deeper. Is that simultaneous to this to make sure that, as you said, until you talk dollars, everybody will do anything, because, yeah, it's not involving money, but when you involve dollars, people.
Yeah, and I can't pick on Dunn, but I can say Four Oaks and Benson were very collaborative, but we didn't get into their financials. So when we all get the financials and look at what interbasin transfer actually costs people, or doesn't cost people, or how we can save money, that's the next phase, and we'll need to get into details with all these people to figure out just where they're at how good a shape or how desperate or how we can, positively, how we can all work the synergy to help each other out. Because the last thing y'all want to have happen is somebody come to you needing $20 million to do something as the county commissioners out of the general fund. You want these enterprise funds to be able to work together to do that. So.
All right, any other questions?
Good.
So is this the appropriate time? I know as looking forward, is that something we can direct staff to look at completion of phase? We'll get a scope and a fee to bring back to us to see what the completion of step one or phase one looks like. Is the board okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you
Mr.
very
Chambers,
much.
good to see you again. I haven't seen you in a while. Mr. Thompson, good to see you as well.
Thank you.
And JD, I see you enough. All right, the next item on the agenda is a request for waiver of Johnston County Residential Sewer Service Policy for 32 Alicia Court. I will need to recuse myself for this. The company I work for, Withers Ravenel, has been part of this project for a long, long time, and therefore I would ask the rest of the board to allow me to be recused and turn it over to Vice Chairman Harris to conduct this piece of business.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So item number 12 on your agenda, who will be presenting this? Ms. Slusser, are you going to take care of that? For the 42 LLC request, the board approve the waiver to allow 32 Alicia Court to connect to the existing sewer main on the property.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. This is a request from 42 East to approve a waiver for 32 Alicia Court to connect to an existing sewer main that is on the property. In your packet, you have that request, and you also have some maps that demonstrate the request and why they believe it is necessary. The sewer service policy as it exists today does not allow staff to provide a waiver, and so that is why this waiver is before you today. Ms. Farmer is here as well to answer any detailed questions with regards to things, but this is the request that you have before you and the request that has been made by 42 East LLC.
Any questions from the board, from the council?
Thank you.
Any questions from Ms. Farmer? Okay. With that, I'll...
Oh, wait,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I have a question. Is there a recommendation or considerations to be considered from Ms. Farmer? Does that put her on the spot?
It does put her on the spot, and I will say typically we don't make a recommendation.
I don't mean a recommendation, but considerations to think about.
Considerations to think about, I believe what we have said in the past is that anytime you vary a policy, it sometimes opens the door to additional requests. I do think in this particular instance it's very fact-specific, which is a way in which you could differentiate this request from other requests, but that would be my opinion with regards to that. I don't know if Ms. Farmer has any.
No, that's fine. That answers my question.
I don't think we need to get them involved in this.
The way I look at it, if we don't approve it, we're going to end up with a piece of land that can never be developed.
Yeah,
Put a house on it, get the tax base.
Tax base, I agree.
it's a situation where they took some right away, made this. I'm going to make a motion that we approve this. I believe this is enough facts specific, as Jennifer said, that it would not have to be applied to any other, and just makes logical sense to do this.
I'm going to second that motion so we can move pretty cut and dry.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please let them be saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Good.
Motion carries. We'll get the chairman back in here, and then we'll move on to item number 13 on the agenda.
All right, item number 13 is appointments, and each of you has a ballot at your seat. And we have, it is for an appointment to our Veteran Services Advisory Board. We have one position open, and we have 3 applicants, and this is for District 4 position. And as we have done in the recent past, is if we have more applicants than we have positions. We fill the ballot, and we will announce who the selection was at our 6 o'clock meeting tonight at the very start of that. So just make sure that, Commissioners, that you get that to the clerk. I mean, I got to look over this way now for Dana. But we do have the 3 applicants, and I'll go ahead, are Bradley Palmer, Anthony Leonard Lasada, and Cade Zeiss are the 3 applicants for the 1 position. So, and any comments on that? All right, next up, we have our delinquent tax collection report. Johnston, you've waited here patiently for this.
Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Before you have the October collection report, you can read it. I'm not going to stretch this out any longer. It's going to be a busy time on the other hallway here soon, and we'll talk more about that next month. Be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. We understand.
Yes. Thank you. We appreciate your brevity.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, next up is manager report and comments. All right, then we turn it over to board reports and comments. Any reports or comments? Didn't think there would be.
I've got one.
All right, we got one.
Make it quick.
I'll make it quick. We were talking about the landfill thing, and I wonder if there, we get a report on the construction inspection volumes. I wonder if we've ever looked at the correlation between those trends versus landfill uses as it relates to plotting, landfill revenues and that type of thing.
Yeah, we make money off C&D.
Yeah. What I'm saying is if we could help plot our pricing for the landfill based on the trends in the inspection department, new construction, that type of thing. Does that make sense? Just a thought. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
All right. And we need a motion to go into closed session.
Okay. I move the board go into closed session to establish or instruct staff concerning the negotiation of price, terms of a contract concerning the acquisition of real property pursuant to NCGS 143-318-1185, and for the purpose of consulting with an attorney employed by the board in order to preserve attorney-client privilege pursuant to NCGS 143-318-1183.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion to go into closed session, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We will go into closed session after about a 5-minute break.